but we just feel like this has actually overlooked the most important issue that we found with the term sheet, and so we want to clarify this.
So are you talking, this is something that's on the agenda, is that correct?
Do you, I believe so, yeah. Do you want me to wait until that time to?
Yeah, this is for this part of the comment. It's just about items that are not on the agenda.
Oh, okay. So we can
go back. If you wouldn't mind waiting until we get into that discussion, that'd be great.
Not at all. Okay, thank you. Sorry about that.
Sure. Okay, anybody else? All right. Where are we here? Okay. The consent agenda. Has everyone had a chance to read all of these? Anybody want to make a motion?
Can I ask one question? I want to respect Jules Drew, her comment. Is she referring to the minutes, or Hardy, is there another place that she's referring to on the agenda?
Yeah, she's referring to the
AFCOM report. Okay.
The AFCOM report, that's correct.
The AFCOM report. Okay. Sorry, thanks.
Okay. Somebody want to make a motion for consent?
I'll make the motion. We approve all consent items 1 through 6.
I'll second that.
Great. Is there any public comment? No. So roll call.
Vice President Diamond?
Yes.
Director Hetherington?
Yes.
Director Odette?
Yes.
President Rolfe?
Yes.
Director Stevens?
Yes.
Okay. On to action items. Action item 7. And David, you wanted to move this your director's comment till after 7. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. All right. So, who wants to take this? Hardy, is this something you want to?
Yes. It's Hardy's item. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. And the board, I'm just here tonight to get the resolution 2022 approved. This is the Ttad Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Vision and Mission Statement. And it is in your board packet. I know it's been reviewed, and I'd be happy to take insight from the board if you'd like to make changes, additions, deletions, or modifications to the resolution. I'll just read, Chair Rolfe, if you'd like, one of the whereas statements, and then the vision and mission portion, and then open it up for board discussion.
Okay.
The second whereas is whereas the Truckee Tahoe Airport District supports the concept that a community should prioritize Ttad, justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion as core values to enhance our community, ourselves, and our organization. And it goes on to have other whereas statements, but I liked that one, so I thought I would read that. And then on the vision, it says, we envision a vibrant, equitable Nevada County, a place where all residents thrive, visitors feel welcome, and we care for one another despite our differences. There is equal and fair access to resources, opportunities are abundant, and everyone does their part to embrace collective responsibility and take actions that uphold racial and social equity. Mission, we inspire and lead our cities, towns, and county to take actions to dismantle systemic racism in our community and make way for a more vibrant and equitable Nevada County. We accomplish this by engaging and listening to those most impacted by racial inequity, defining the critical issues, educating ourselves, creating public awareness, designing policies and programs to address these issues. And so that resolution was adopted by the town of Truckee, Nevada City, and hopefully tonight, as directed by the board, would adopt this resolution in support of what's here. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you. Does anybody have any clarifying questions about the Ttad resolution?
I just have one question about it. And it's interesting, Hardy, because when you were reading that, I think that you paused on that. We're Nevada and Placer. So I'm wondering, like, if it is this okay for us to adopt this with that particular language not recognizing Placer County, or should we add that in there?
I think what happened is the file copy that got put in here is not the copy with the district. So I think the verbiage should actually be the Truckee Tahoe Airport District, because it is a bi-county jurisdiction. And so with that correction in place under vision and mission, we would put the Truckee Tahoe Airport District. Sorry for that error.
Super. That's all I wondered. Thank you.
Awesome.
Oh, I have a question. Who wrote this?
It was adapted. I wrote it. It was adapted from another document that was originally circulated through the county and the towns.
And I don't really want to change it, but it specifically calls out racism. There's a lot of other isms that we want to address, right?
Yeah, and I was hoping to have that conversation tonight. If you'd like to add those, we can certainly modify this and add in any of the components that are important to this board, put those in there and bring it back for a final copy.
I think there's a ton we should add. I mean, start with the things we can't discriminate against legally. They're all isms. Age,
Right.
gender, sexual orientation. Anyone else?
Religion.
Ethnicity. I guess that's racism. I don't know.
I agree with Teresa, and I very much liked your first whereas that you didn't read, that we place a high value on quality of life, community, respect, and civility. And they understand that these characteristics are essential to any healthy community. I really liked that first whereas, so I wanted to say it. And I agree with Teresa that we need to expand those isms.
Could I suggest maybe considering going the opposite direction? Is instead of expanding the isms, to take actions to dismantle systemic, I just blanked out.
Discrimination?
Discrimination, right. Like, would that be all inclusive?
It is inclusive. The question is, does it need specificity so that we can uphold it? I mean, it includes everything, but it's also a pretty broad term.
Mm-hmm.
It could
And
be
things change, right? We have ADA now, and we didn't have it 20 years ago.
Yeah, one thing I will just pass along is that during the consideration of this document in its original format by the county, many jurisdictions and organizations such as the airport district are already bound by non-discriminatory clauses both in employment and contracting. So our airport already has those called out specifically through our grant assurances, also through our contracting and our employment practices. So this statement was geared really toward the current affairs that led up to the last couple of years with issues surrounding race and equity. And so that's kind of the format that it came in. But again, happy to adapt it however this board may feel that it's most reflective of your values.
Well, I stand by my position, but obviously defer to the majority. But racism is just the tip of the iceberg. It's just what's in the news right now. Right. And I would like to create something that anyone could point to and say, "Look, they like me here. I'm welcome here."
Mm-hmm.
We're happy to take this back, with these comments and do a redraft and add those in, and we can see what that looks like.
That's my only suggestion. The rest of it's fantastic, and I love the intent.
I support that effort. Let's redo it and get it done.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for your consideration.
Yeah, we'll definitely do that
next month.
That's great. Is there any public comment? I don't see anybody. Okay, so Director Diamond asked to have director announcements after action item number 7. So go ahead, David.
Okay, so we recently saw an email that was sent to members of the air show and to our own GM, Kevin. The author of the email included a comment that was meant to be disparaging about my sexual orientation. This was offensive to me, and it was offensive to others. In the spirit of the Jedi resolution, I'm hoping that we have consensus to put on our next agenda an item to define policy that states that we will not fund any organization whose leadership proves to be in contrast to the values that we adopt in the resolution. It's my understanding that the Airshow Committee has already removed this individual from a leadership role, and I greatly appreciate that on their effort. But I would like us to explore this as a matter of policy next time, and I'm hoping that we can find a consensus here to put that on an agenda.
I second that suggestion. I found that email ridiculously offensive.
Horrifying.
Yes.
Yep.
All of them.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, that was just the most egregious, but they were all pretty out of line. Glad we all agree on that.
Yeah, we'd be more than willing to have that on the next agenda and prepare something for that.
That would be great.
I appreciate that support. Thank you.
So, since we're in board member announcements, does any other board member have an announcement?
No.
Okay. Moving on. Oh, sorry.
I just wanted to say that the coffee talk we had at the Lift House on Tuesday morning, which had 25 people there, a lot of people with different opinions, and everybody remained respectful. And it was a heck of a good program. And thank you, David, for setting it up, and thank you, Mary and Rick, for being there, and Kevin, and everybody who participated. They spoke their piece.
Mm-hmm.
It was good.
It was good.
That's great. I wish I could have attended.
I was going to say the same thing. It's like the fact that I could be there to set you up, and then I had to leave was killing me, only because I felt the same way at the last ACT meeting. It's like, come on, I want to be there for this. So, but I think Mary and Rick are doing a great job on this topic, and I really appreciate the time that you're taking on it. And if I could just also add, I was thrilled that so many people were there. That really is the point of these meetings, to have these discussions that we can't have in a forum like this. So I'm really appreciative that everybody showed up.
Great. Thank you. Okay. Item number 8, PI 311.
Yeah, I'll just sorry.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Do you want to do that, or Mark?
I was just going to kick it off a little bit. We obviously have an ad hoc committee, so I don't want to steal your thunder for the ad hoc committee that's been working on this. If you wanted to do it, but I could just give a brief overview if you'd like. Great. Yeah. So before you is a redraft of our of PI 311, and after our discussion at the last board meeting, we took this back. The ad hoc committee, the Community Foundation, worked on this and brought forward various modifications and changes. We left items highlighted in yellow. We know there's a lot of stuff now on these copies, but we wanted you to see the things that were changed prior, and then what we've added now. And so the Community Foundation helped us with these, the ad hoc committee. There's one item that I did want to bring up, and then I'll turn it over to the ad hoc committee and Mark Lamb, who's also worked on this. Under the, and we apologize, there's no page numbers, but it's under the eligibility criteria in the program. It's about the third or fourth page in. I'll get you the exact one. Yeah, it's on the fourth page, where it talks about organizations are permitted to apply for one district funding source. We probably want to talk a little bit about that. In that, for instance, we have things like we have some nonprofits that have storage. It's $250 a year to be able to store a container here for these nonprofits. And so, our thought was we probably, I would argue that I don't think we're talking about those kind of programs. And so we might need to get a little more descriptive of what we're talking about with that. I think that's more for things like some of our other policies related to where we discount rent for nonprofit storage in non-aeronautical facilities that we have, things like that these other policies would fall under, or under their airport land use compatibility plan, where we may help with construction on a public building that the airport land use compatibility plan required additional cost. And so that's one thing that we might want to refer to. But with that, maybe I'll turn it over to Rick and Kat to talk about anything else they wanted to, as well as Mark.
Well, since the February meeting, it's been a multiple meeting with Kat and Rick and Kevin and Mark, and especially Phyllis Pecan and Sachet of the TTCF. And we went through, we had to go back to the February 20th and yellow line it from there, because we did a lot of good work on this. And I am hopeful that this board will approve this so that the TTCF can advertise the effort and have and go out on April 15th. And I'm very impressed with everybody who contributed to this effort on the committee, and I think did a good job.
I second that.
Question.
Teresa.
I have a question about the fiscal impact. We said that we're suggesting, or we're going to approve, a $600,000 budget for this. And we already have some other earmarks, and TTCF has paid 5% of the board-approved distributed agency partnership funding amount. So my question is, what if we want to do more? Is that allowable in any given year? Does it have to be already vetted by TTCF for us to fund something? And will they be paid 5% if we go above and beyond? Those are my three questions.
Well, let's go the 5%. Last year, I thought we were going to do 500, and we did like 660, and they were paid 5% of the amount that we granted, and they had vetted all the people who got money. And what's going to happen is we're going to have people apply, and there were 9 people on the committee who did these interviews. I mean, I'm impressed at how many people they had. And they will come up with another ranking like they did last year. And we're aiming at that number. But if we want to go higher, we can. And the more that we spend, they get 5%. And it's really up to this board to make a decision when it comes up. I think we're going to do a little bit better job than before. We kind of stumbled our way through the last approval cycle, but we kept going till we were at, I don't have the number in front of me, 666 or something like that. And yes, we can go higher.
That answers 2 of my questions. The third one was, can we fund something that has not been vetted by TTCF yet?
No.
I would say, yeah, probably not. Not under PI 311. And what I mean by that is they may come in for nonprofit storage in the warehouse or something like that, and those are different. But under PI 311,
I think it's important that everybody who is interested in this program has to go through the process.
I agree.
But there's sometimes extenuating circumstances. We could get something dropped in our lap from Ukraine that needs some money, and
well, Teresa,
we want to do that.
You got to be able to count to 3. That's all.
What does that mean?
3 votes.
Vote.
Oh, okay, cool. So it's possible. I don't have anything in mind. I just want to keep our options open. We could do that if we wanted to.
Yeah, I think the purpose of the PI 311 is just to give some structure and some framework. And I agree that there could definitely be something that gets dropped in our lap, and I think we can make a special circumstance. But this, for the most part, is the process they need to go through so that we have transparency and all the other reasons why we would do this. But I don't think it precludes some sort of emergency measure or last minute.
Okay. Some of my questions. Thank you. I'm in support.
I've got a few questions, sort of.
David, please.
Okay, so and it's actually Kevin, exactly what you just noted on yours. I've got a note about the same thing here. That the wording of that I think is not super airtight because it can. The first sentence is not in gels with the last sentence. But I've got a suggestion that that I think might work for that, and it's simpler. And my suggestion is, if an organization receives funding from more than one district source in a calendar year, the lesser of those source contributions must be no greater than $1,000. So basically, what I'm saying that is, we've got so many different policy instructions through which somebody might be funded by something. But I think the spirit of what we were concerned about was major funding coming from multiple sides. And in the case of this, it's basically saying that you can have funding from multiple sources, but the lesser of those cannot be more than $1,000. So if they do have storage, for example, that does not preclude them from applying for an agency grant.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, that would, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
Sorry, the last point, sorry, Kevin, I just wanted to make on that, is that then there's also a distinction in there between receives and applies for. Because I do feel like if somebody applies for money in process A and does not get it, that shouldn't preclude them from applying for something else throughout the course of the year. So I'm more concerned with the receipt of the money than I am for the application, and then this might solve our two funding things, no matter what the two funding things are.
Yeah, I like that, partly because, if the North Tahoe High School softball team gets $750, that's it? And if they had another idea that they wanted to come in under another program. So that makes sense to me. Let's put it that way. And I agree with change and apply to receive.
Yeah, and then I have another just one more comment about another part of it.
Wait. Before we go, do you have wording? Because we're going to vote on this. And
that was my wording.
I want to be cleared on what the wording is.
Okay, so the wording that I'm suggesting is, if an organization receives funding from more than one district source in a calendar year, the lesser of those two source contributions must be no greater than $1,000.
So that would substitute what is written there at number 5.
That's correct.
That's just, okay.
Complete replacement of that paragraph.
Okay.
And then the next part about it, this is I'm kind of going back to the last discussion that we had on this, because I know there was another part that I felt like we stumbled on, and there was another part like I had an issue with. Do you remember when we were discussing like a representative involvement in TTCF? And the concern was, let's say, for example, that it's Kat. That Kat represents the board in the TTCF discussions, and Kat is participant in all the stuff. And then Kat comes back to the board, and then Kat votes. Is that Kat voting twice, in a sense, or whomever voting twice? So what I'm thinking, this is also in Section 3, Agency Partnership Process. There's a sentence that says, committee members will independently complete application evaluations following a prescribed scoring rubric. And what I'm suggesting in the adjustment to that sentence, committee members not affiliated with TTAD will independently complete application, blah, blah, blah. So basically, our representative participates in the process and make sure that what we're going for, our deals and all that, are all represented, but our representative does not participate in the ranking that TTCF does. So that way the representative can come back, and assuming that that's a board member, maybe it's not a board member, but then that person can come back and vote with the rest of us, not having already voted on the stuff.
Well,
that makes sense.
What we did in the discussions is talked about Kat representing.
Yeah.
us in the meetings with this committee, but not voting in the rankings.
Oh, then that's exactly what I'm talking about.
Is that correct, Kat?
Yeah.
That's what I remember. Yeah.
Oh, then
Well, there's 3 people who remembered the same thing, but
Okay.
we were psychotic. We knew what you were thinking.
okay. Yeah. So I'm just suggesting that maybe we put that into the policy that it says not affiliated, so that it's clear that, because the
Yeah.
previous sentence says that our representative is on the committee, and then it says committee members will then do the thing. So it's
We'll clarify that. We'll add that provision in there.
okay.
Add that.
Okay, and then the last part about it, and I know that this is a point of controversy, so I'm willing to drop this if we don't have the love for it. When we do other big things like our facilities maintenance plan and airspace planning, this kind of procedures work and all that, we hire organizations for their expertise, and they come back and we have questions about stuff, but we don't really micromanage the content of the recommendation, right? I remember when we talked about the facilities, we had concerns about that. When we talk about the procedures, we have concerns about that. But we don't come back and say, well, the XYZ procedure is okay, but we want you to fly over here instead of over there, right? We rely on the expertise. I do feel like TTCF provides expertise here that at least I would feel comfortable if they went and they did the process and they came back to us with a package, a recommended package, and that we vote on the package and say, yes, we're going to pass it, or no, we're not going to pass it, and we want them to reevaluate something else. This is the only part about this that still feels a little squirrely to me, is that we come back, they do all this ranking, they come back with a recommendation, and that we still then start going by line. That's the only thing I'm saying, just because I feel like it's a little inconsistent with the way that we treat expertise with other consultants. So I just wanted to throw that out in case anybody had any comments on that. I don't want to like send 311 back into the abyss to be regurgitated again, because I think maybe in the case like this, we might not even need to do that in the policy, but I just wanted to hear some input on that. And that's it for me. Thanks.
Well, I'm not really sure what you're trying to say, that we get into the weeds on these
The
sponsorship.
opposite.
That we not do that. That we let TTCF, like, if let's say that it's $500,000, which is I think the number that's used in there, that we say to TTCF, we want to spend $500,000. We want you to take applications. We want you to do your ranking. Kat would presumably be there the entire process, looking over this whole thing. And then we want you to come back with a package that costs $500,000 to us, and you're recommending this amount of money goes here and this amount of money goes there and whatever, and that we just accept it as, or we consider it as a whole package, not that we get into the weeds of we like this one but we don't want to, or we want to raise this one or we want to lower that one. I just feel like that's more consistent with the way that we handle other expertise that we pay for. And I think ultimately, when I think of all the policies that we do, I think ideally they're policies that will outlive us as the 5 board members, that they will be sustainable beyond November and beyond 2024. No matter who is on this board, that the policy is sustainable, and that it doesn't become a popularity contest, essentially.
Well, David, you brought this up at the last meeting, and we didn't agree with that.
I'm just wondering
I did.
if we're still if we still don't agree, or if we might.
Okay.
Agree. That's why I'm asking.
I understand what you're saying, but I believe that we had a majority of the board not agreeing with it, Mary.
Okay. I
don't agree. I don't want to give away that much. I don't know.
I feel like Josh kind of had something to say about that.
Yeah, just real quick, I remember, and Brent, feel free to, I know you talked probably with Josh about that, but what I remember was we just have to be super clear, and I think David's saying this, I think he's not trying to give that away, but that we as you as the airport board is making that final funding decision and have reviewed everything and is an agreement and then approving it. And I think David, you're agreeing that's what needs to happen, but maybe it comes in a menu of, here's your policy, here's how this fits your policy, and we'd like you to approve that. But maybe Brent probably can answer that better than I can.
The main thing is that the board has to retain final decision making on this. You cannot give that to another organization. The board has to make the final decision. I certainly understand David's concern about getting into the weeds, but then on the other hand, and I'm doing both sides, both hands. One, keep out of the weeds, but two, leave a little bit more discretion if there is a recommendation from the foundation that says, A, B, and C get this much, and you say, well, we want to give a little more to A and a little left to C. You don't have that. You can do it either way, but the main thing is that you have the final decision-making process.
Yeah, and just to clarify, what I was suggesting is that if that package is delivered and exactly what you just said, Brent, that we would like to make an adjustment like this, then we basically send it back to TTCF for a revision. That was just it.
I'm still not in agreement. Sorry.
I'm not in agreement either. I think that we ought to go through the things and vote on, and not accept the package as a fixed recommendation.
Do you feel like the process that's outlined in here? To be honest with you, I was a little confused as how it would differ from what we did last time.
There's one, we understand it better, so I think that's different, not as written. Two, there'd be no presentations like we had last year in advance. There'd be no presentation, so people get a leg up. And there's a thing in there, the no lobbying provision enforced by board members. It's in the policy.
Yeah, and maybe one thing we didn't have last time is a written format to go through. We had to kind of fumble through that and figure out what we were going to use. But at least now we have steps 1 through 7 that you would follow, which may help. I agree that you get to step 6 and it kind of goes into a similar process, but at least it's articulated on how you would go through that, rather than trying to figure it out on the fly like we had to do the first time.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question. Kind of tying into process is if, there's the thing about not lobbying us and not trying to work a back door or having a presentation, but at the time of the application, when we're making these decisions, and some agency, one of the nonprofits, brings in 50 people to say, vote for us, do they each get 3 minutes, or can we put a limit of 10 minutes per group? And this is a question more for Brent. Or if 50 people show up and they each want to talk 3 minutes, we could be a long time parsing each one of these. So I'm asking Brent, can we put some sort of limits total per group or not?
I think it would be difficult because each person in that group may say, I had something new to say. The standard for public comment is 3 minutes per person, but there was a case out of San Francisco where I think it was more like 100 or 200 people showed up, and they did limit the public comment for each person to 2 minutes, which helps a little bit.
Which is still 4 hours.
It's still a long time, but the appellate court said, yeah, under those circumstances, that's okay. The board chair or president had said, how many people are planning on speaking? And when they saw the show of hands, they said, okay, because of that finding, we are reducing the time.
And I do see in the policy there, we're requesting that the recommends the organization appoint or designate a single spokesperson. But my concern would be that, and this would be one argument to accept it as a whole, because then we could have 2 hours of public comment of people who have their favorite entity. And I have a concern about that. Believe it or not, Rick.
Well, I understand that, but my attitude is somebody tries to do that, they get no vote from me.
Right, and that's what I was going to say. I mean, you can't stop them, but you can point out that the board members, either individually or collectively, have a good presentation already, and that it's not necessary to continue speaking. That could discourage them from just saying the same thing over and over. Mm-hmm. Even though my experience, with past board meetings over the years has been, that has happened in the past on several different topics. Maybe mm-hmm. not the 50 people, but enough where the board has gotten the idea, and people just keep repeating the same thing.
Yeah, and I'd say not just with the airport district. The cities I've worked for, where you have a line of people coming up to speak on an item, that's part of the public process for some items. But I think our hope is, as we kind of talked this through and wrote this part, Mary, that you referenced, is that as Ttad and I think myself or whoever from the airport is working with the selection committee, that's very clear to those organizations that bringing the whole soccer team to speak is less effective. But at the same time, we are in no way trying to discourage the public from being a part of the process and commenting. But there's an efficient way to do that if they deem that that's necessary. But we've kind of articulated here that that's not what we're asking for.
So the school district limits public comment to 30 minutes and then cuts it off. And then if there are people who still want to speak, they give them time at the end of the meeting. Is that something, could we just say we have 30 minutes and then have the president call on one spokesperson from each one to make sure it's not, loaded up with 10 people, for one organization, and then nobody else gets a chance to speak? Is that a process thing we could do, or?
I'm going to jump in. I'll defer to Josh, but I would be uncomfortable with that, especially putting it at the end of the meeting, because the Brown Act says that the public comment has to be taken before taking action on the item. So if you say, okay, we've had our 30 minutes, all in favor, the people who are giving public comment later, it's not helpful for the board's input. So I would be uncomfortable. And I'm wondering is that 30 minutes for?
That might just be for
that's for items not on the agenda.
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
It's all right. If we have 50 people show up, we'll just do a special meeting. That's what we're here for, to interact with the public.
So, and I assume, Kat, you want to keep, because right now it's a 2-2 and you want to.
I would like to ask Phyllis to give us her best thinking on that.
On whether to accept a package or be able to vote independently. Honestly, I would hope at some point that we would gain your trust where you would feel comfortable with that, but I totally understand and don't want to take away your discretionary power to look individually at these. The last time we didn't have an amount. So our funding recommendations where we said fully fund or not, we were going out on, just our best guess on that limb of, okay, we're not sure what the total amount to fund here is. So, we couldn't do our best work either. So when we do come to you with our rankings and, ranking and rating summary, we will have amounts that we recommend not to exceed the amount available. But because you do have that discretion, you're keeping that discretion to award larger amounts if you all vote on it. I don't know that I can overrule that. And say that, just take our package, so, leaving you the flexibility if there are funds. I'm not going to stand in the way of you awarding more. if that's, the will of the board.
Right.
I remember when we did the last round, we kind of struggled with this for a minute, and we said, well, is there anything on here that absolutely nobody wants? Remember that? I mean, we were kind of like, oh, should we do a straw poll? 2 people like it, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't institute any of that, but I think that there could be applications asking us for money that we just don't believe in. It's possible. Anyone can apply. So
It's
I like the
definitely
discretion.
Yeah. Is it all right if I speak again?
Yes, please.
Again, that's one of the reasons we would like a member of the board to be on the ad hoc committee and on this review committee, not to rate and rank, but to make sure that we are interpreting your goals and priorities correctly when we're making our decisions, and to come back to you and give you that assurance that yes, all of that was considered carefully by this volunteer group. So, again, we're hoping to put a few more guardrails on this and make it a more smoother process for all involved and build your confidence in the process.
Okay.
You know my position.
Does anyone else have anything from the board to add to this?
I have other things I want to bring up, but is there clarity on this, which way we're going? Kat, where are you landing?
I'm landing with wanting a little more discretion.
Okay.
And again, I feel like this is, I feel really good about this product, but I also feel like it's still a work in progress. And I think, certainly we can come back and make adjustments as needed in the future. And maybe we do decide that that's how we want it to go. But for right now, I guess I'd like for the board to have a little bit more say in what's happening with that.
Okay. So there you go. I had under common definitions, the lettering got off. It's just a QA thing, but since this is a document that will be guiding document, it should be cleaned up. So after F, there was partnerships with nonprofits should be G, and then all the following ones change as well, Kevin. The other one is what is labeled currently as I, but it will be J, is the sphere of influence. All areas within the political boundaries of the airport district. Sphere of influence may also extend to areas outside the district political boundaries where the district and communities are served and potentially impacted by airport operations. And I think this goes back to, well, this policy goes back to 2015 when Parasol Foundation was doing a lot of the things that Project Manna and those entities were doing, and Parasol was an incline village. Well, Parasol is no more. Incline, we have pilots that use our airport that live in Incline, but there's no funding from Incline that comes to the airport district. And I would like that particular section removed about outside our district political boundaries, because I think those are our constituents and those are who we serve. Throwing the balloon out, is that capturing other people, or?
I think you're right on that, Mary, on the Parasol, and
yes,
there may be organizations that were providing services into Kings Beach or other things that we thought, well, do we want to, because maybe we could craft something that would help that, but I think you're right, that's no longer maybe relevant.
So I would like to remove that paragraph. Okay. Is there consensus?
It's good with me.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, I'm okay with it.
Okay. Moving on to community sponsorship, up to $5,000. I think it's imperative in this to help that any of the community sponsorships up to $5,000 that the airport provides, and I think we put 100 or 120,000 into that pot, that we must provide last year's information to the community foundation, last year's and this year's that information to the community foundation during their vetting process.
Last year's information on partnership.
On the community sponsorships. That they should be aware when you're looking at all these other things. You should know what other things are being funded, and so I just think that information should be provided to that committee.
I'm okay with that, but if they got over $1,000, they're ineligible for the sponsorship program.
Which is why the community foundation needs to have that data.
Well, that's easy to do. I'm okay with that.
We'll provide that. We can put that in there.
Okay.
That language in, I agree.
Okay. Then moving on I am thankful to Kat to want to be on this. I had concerns last month because of the voting, but I think that's been addressed. So thank you for bringing your expertise there. So I think that'll be a beneficial thing. And this is also under eligibility criteria. This is the part about the have an approval date no more than 1 year prior to the submission date. And due to the whole COVID thing, things had been funded before and then they slipped, and some of those things just didn't happen. And I can see, on one hand I can see it, and on the other hand I can see where this leads to difficulties. So I just wonder, is there some wiggle room in there to not hold it to the 1 year? Because it's like when we went through it last year, they would have to have been to the agencies and they hadn't gotten the blessing within a year. And I just wondered other people's thoughts on this and what the committee's thoughts were on this.
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Some of the projects, do you want to speak to it, Kat? Or Rick? Some of the things get approvals, but the project may take more than a year to get completed or to get the rest of their funding. But the way it's written says have an approval date no more than 1 year prior to the submission data, which means if they're submitting in April 15th, they have to have an approval from another agency no earlier than April 15th of 2021. And they might have already gotten approval.
This is the resolution piece that we struggled with?
It's in an eligibility criteria.
It's a motion from another public agency.
Which they have to have to receive funds from us.
Right.
But
before
the
they can get it out.
The 1 year limit is the part that I'm wondering about. I absolutely agree they have to have another agency putting flesh in the game. I'm not sure I agree with the 1 year limitation because sometimes projects take longer.
I'm with you.
Maybe I could. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Kevin.
I was just going to say that we want to have something there because sometimes what you'll have is somebody that submits a resolution, and I guess we need to make sure that maybe it's there, but it has to be current to the current application, rather than submitting a resolution for something they submitted 2 or 3 years ago. And they still have a resolution. They go, here it is, and now that's my resolution, and that public board hasn't even looked at it for a couple of years. I think, to protect the integrity of the program and that it is a partnership with another public agency, even if another nonprofit's involved, we want something fairly current. And I'm not tied to a year, but we just want to make sure that it feels current, and it is current of what the other agency is providing.
So maybe we should take it out of eligibility and put it into in order to receive your funds. And I don't know what section that is, but you have to do it. right? You have to be a 501c3 and you have to have a
Yeah, that's how we did
good
it.
funding. You have to
right?
have it.
We didn't fund everybody until they had all of their paperwork together. And some of them, it took a little while.
Shouldn't they all have this public agency before they apply? Or is that not reasonable? Phyllis?
It's not really reason. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Phyllis.
Well, it certainly wasn't reasonable when we did the last cycle because people weren't given notice that we were starting that cycle. So it was so short. It was truncated to try and get a cycle in 2021. So this was just an attempt to keep everything current with the current year's process. But, you know, I'm not going to die on that hill if this is a problem for you guys, because I know it was problems for a lot of the nonprofits to get on the, you know, county agenda, town agenda, you know, whatever, and get a new formal resolution when they thought they had something viable. But we were told, you know, after that first, you know, cycle that, no, we're going to go back and, you know, adhere to this formal resolution, and it has to be for the current application. So, you know, assuming we're going to get on a schedule now with an annual process that, you know, opens and closes at generally the same time, that was the reason for the 1 year.
Yeah, and even with the truncated, sort of compressed cycle from last year, I think everybody managed to get their resolution. Maybe the longest was 7 months. Does that sound right?
There were a couple that
take longer, but
yeah, and there were a couple that were on an agenda to get one, but couldn't get it to us in time for the. So I think if we give more time, they'll be able to do that. Maybe it's 18 months instead of 12 months. I do feel like it helps the integrity of the program and show that we are working with other public agencies and not just us, that we have something that's somewhat fresh and not a couple of years old. But that's just my thought.
Can I just ask, just for clarification? So Mary, you're talking about the 3D, I see the part about it being more than 1 year. And Kevin, I think your comment was that the concern is that if it is too old, that it might not be specifically relevant to this ask. Is that correct?
Well, I think part of the intent of these agency partnerships is that the airport district and another public agency are partnering either together on something, or those two plus a nonprofit are all partnering on something. And so as we're showing this to the public and showing it to regulators or whoever wants to look at what the airport's doing, if something is aged and it's like, well, that was from 2019 and you're in 2022, and are they still support that? So having something that's a little bit fresh is what I'm kind of getting at. But I agree with what Phyllis is saying, because the problem we had last time is it was so tight. And I work with these other general managers. I had a general managers meeting today, an area managers meeting. If they have a few months or 3 months that they can process this and work it in, and some of them are going to be really quick because it's projects they're already working on and they want to partner with people to get it done. But we just need to make sure they have adequate time to do that. And I think we can do that within the program. But I'm also okay extending it out, 18 months or something like that.
The timeline for this new cycle will be open for applications April 15th and close for applications at the end of July. So we have a much longer window to apply than we did in that first cycle in 2021. So again, hoping that gives the nonprofits and the other agencies the time they need to get the formal resolutions.
Okay, because that's July.
Yeah.
Right. So that.
And even extending it 2 years would maybe give an opportunity for them to reapply with that same resolution if they didn't get funded 1 year.
Yeah, that's true.
And it could just be a letter of support that that this resolution from our public agency is still relevant. That we have something that shows if they applied a second year because they didn't get the first year, if the town or the PUD or somebody, one of the PUDs, wrote just a follow-up letter from their GM saying this is still relevant. I don't know, just something that we can show that they are still, this other public agency is still interested in this even though it was more than a year ago.
Forgive my ignorance on this, but do the resolutions that come from the other agencies, is it common for them to have expiration dates or not?
Not necessarily, but you could have something that we get that is in a budget that is no longer an approved budget. Where it says we have money that we're going to put towards this, but they may have adopted a new budget. And we're still looking at this, and then we got to go call and say, hey, does your current budget, still have this in there? And then we need to kind of coordinate. We just and the nonprofits, if there is a nonprofit, because some of these we didn't have nonprofits. It was right with the public agency, which are great. The nonprofits should be able to take care of that. And then Phyllis, you're the one that's the expert on that, if I'm speaking correctly.
Yeah, I agree with you, Kevin, on this. I think we're giving enough time. 3.5 months is hopefully enough time.
Okay. I just wanted to see the other board's view on this. If a year was enough, if that is a good thing, because then that's your elected agencies. It's not going over different years, or and maybe it was just because of COVID issues that we had that many of those delays, or we could go to 18 months.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't have a problem with the 18 months. It was just some way to contain it and make sure that it was, relevant to the current application.
I'm good with 18 months.
How about the rest of the board okay with it?
I'm okay with it.
Yes.
Okay. Then on the next page where, it's still under eligibility, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then there's a paragraph in here that's not numbered that's talking about capital campaigns. Is that part of 5 or is that 6? And then what's labeled as 6 becomes 7? I'm just curious. There's like a paragraph that's indented different or what I'm just not clear.
It would be its own paragraph. It would be 6. And we'll
So
make sure
it's 6.
Numbering
So everything else changes.
Well,
okay.
Yeah, 6 and then you have 7 below it. Yeah.
Okay. Just, it's, this becomes a creed of a guiding document. So yeah.
We'll make sure all the numbering and the editing flows the right way. The content.
Okay. And that was it. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Any other board members have any other questions? Is there any public comment? Tom Meadows. You're on mute, Tom.
Tom, you might be on mute.
Oh, haven't figured it out yet. Okay. Thank you, Madam President. You really need to simplify this whole thing, and you could simplify it by scrapping 90% of the policy instruction, because airport money should stay on the airport and be used for airport projects. The only airport money that goes off the airport should be done in $5,000 increments. And notice that's a $2,000 increment increase from last month. If someone asks for $500,000, give them $5,000 and send them on their way. Now, regarding the air show, one must realize that airports and air shows go hand in glove. And in our situation, the air show committee should not have to go to the board with hat in hand, because they're an integral part of the air show. Airport money is for the airports. Now, you got $1.3 million in the budget for giving away. And yesterday I was talking about this in the coffee talk place, and both Director Hetherington and Manager Smith said, yeah, we're doing stuff with the ASIP and the facility management plan, and realistically, you're nibbling at things. You nibble at this, nibble at that, and you don't fix the hotel row roof. I don't know why you can't spend money on the airport like that, but it's frustrating. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Anybody else? Okay. Would someone like to make a motion?
Yes, I would. I would like to make a motion, but I'm going to need some help on a couple of amendments that we've agreed to so that we vote on what we agreed to. I would like to move to accept the ad hoc committee recommended version of policy number 311, community benefit program changes. And I know we agreed to put the David Diamond $1,000 maximum, which we got his word, so I'm not going to repeat them because I can't remember them. We agreed to take out a paragraph that Mary recommended. What else did we agree to?
Yeah, the sphere of influence paragraph, remove that.
Right?
Yeah.
Keep going.
And that the committee members not affiliated with TTAD will independently rank. So
Correct.
specifying that only the non-TTAD committee members would rank.
Okay.
That the community sponsorship up to $5,000 data be provided from 2021 and 2022, from the previous year and the existing year to TTCF for their vetting process.
Agreed.
18 months on the date for a resolution or a motion of support.
Thank you.
Then got that one. Those are the big ones I had.
Okay,
That's
well,
what-
let me read the rest of the motion. Increasing sponsorships to a level of maximum 5,000 from the current 3,000. Increasing agency partnerships over 5,000 from the current 3,000 annual limit. Setting the partnership budget at 500,000. Noting that multi-year agency partner funding requests will be addressed on a discretionary basis using annual board goals as guiding principles. Noting that although capital campaign agency partnership funding requests are not typically funded, they will be addressed on a discretionary basis using the annual board goals as guiding principles. This approval of this motion will allow the TTCF to begin the 2022 agency partners application cycle as scheduled on April 15th, 2022. That is my motion.
Second.
Before you take a vote, Catherine, I have a question for you. Are you a board member of the Community Foundation?
No.
Then I have nothing more to say at this point.
I was, but I haven't been for a couple of years now.
Okay. There's going to be a disclosure if you still were on the board, but
Right.
that's
right.
fine. Never mind.
Okay, so roll call.
Vice President Diamond,
Yes.
Director Hetherington,
Yes.
Director Odette,
Yes.
President Rolfe,
Yes.
Director Stevens.
Yes.
Great.
Awesome.
Thanks for everyone's work on that.
That's very
Thank you for-
exciting.
Thank you to the ad hoc committee and Kevin and Phyllis.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mark Lamb helped us.
Mark Lamb.
Yes, Mark.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll get started in April. That's exciting.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
All right, we'll move on to agenda item number 9. update to minimum standards for flight training and aircraft rental.
And I'm going to just start this, and then I'll turn it over to Hardy, if that's okay. That at the last meeting, the board asked us to go back and look at our minimum standards for flight training. And so there's two things that we're going to do. We're going to modify or suggest some modifications to our minimum standards for flight training and also for aircraft rental that would affect Sierra Aero. And by the way, all the things that we're doing affect any operator on the airport. The second piece of the staff report talks about a request from Mr. Sloan for commercial privileges. So if the board approves the modifications to those standards, the actual approval for the commercial privileges to operate the flight training meeting these standards would be a staff approval. And so we could talk a little bit about that if you need to, but that's kind of how we've done those in the past. But I just want to put that out there. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Hardy to explain the modifications to the policies.
Okay, thanks. I think Kevin did a good job of framing that up. Essentially, there's two areas that we're looking for direction and acceptance on tonight. One of them is within the minimum standards, independent flight training operator, Section 8, and aircraft rental or flight training operator, SASO, Section 5. And so the characteristics that outline a flight instructor with an owned aircraft, I put in my staff report. That's items 1 through 6. And the basics are that the operator is a certified flight instructor in good standing with the FAA. The operator owns an appropriate aircraft for the given rating. The operator has an aircraft storage hangar at the airport, so that doesn't necessarily mean that it's an executive hangar. It just means it's an aircraft storage hangar. The operator is the sole owner-operator of the aircraft. That means Kevin Sloan or a different operator under this provision could not lease an airplane, rent an airplane, or borrow an aircraft from somebody to come up and provide flight instruction. And that was really our attempt to limit speculation in the marketplace and prevent people from just getting a hangar, getting an aircraft, and throwing out a shingle and starting up a business. It also says, number 5, that the operator can't rent or loan or lease the aircraft. It's strictly used for instruction or solo flight by a student in pursuit of the given rating. And this is a little bit important in that as the person gets particularly a private pilot's license, they'll be required to solo and fly solo as the solo manipulator that controls the aircraft. At that point, in this scenario, Mr. Sloan could give the aircraft to his student, and the student would be flying that airplane. But what he couldn't do is he couldn't say that once the rating was complete that aircraft was for rental. That's described under the minimum standards for aircraft rental or flight training operator, and those standards have not changed except for one minor change that I'll mention in a minute. And the sixth characteristic about this type of operation is that the operator does not employ staff, so they don't have contracted certified flight instructors or associated personnel in the conduct of the instruction portion. So you couldn't propagate a business with multiple instructors using one aircraft owned by an individual inside a hangar. And again, this is all designed to fit the spirit of what we think the board tasked staff with doing, which is finding a competitive spot in the marketplace here at the airport for a flight instructor who owns an aircraft and wants to provide limited flight instruction. And you'll see in the policy we didn't amend. We do not require an office space, so we're not asking that the person rent or lease office space. We feel that this type of activity would not necessitate the need to have a brick and mortar presence on the airport. So different spaces could be used. That could be the flight training room, it could be the simulator room, or it could be public spaces within the airport district building. And we think that that's going to work well. The red line copy is attached for your review. I also put a link in my staff report for the full original copy, which is a pretty dense document with a lot of different provisions. With that, I'll open it up to any questions you may have and take insight if you'd like to make modifications to any of the material I've provided for you.
Hardy, you were going to mention real quick the for folks that rent aircraft, individuals that aren't flight instructors.
Yeah, we did make one change to that, and we took the aircraft number, rental number, from 2 to 1. So Sierra Aero can have one aircraft for rent at a period of time, and then it does need to be certified for IFR flight or the given rating that their instruction is. So that's the one modification we did make. to that aircraft rental or flight training operator standard. And that is at this point relevant because 01 Golf is down for some period of time. So we thought that was appropriate. And I think that's it. Kevin, does that address what we were talking about?
That's
Okay.
what I wanted you to.
Okay. Also, I will mention just really briefly, we do not currently charge a fee to any of the independent flight training operators. And because this is a new section with owned aircraft certified flight instructor, we made a recommendation to adopt and direct the general manager to make a modification to the master fee schedule for a $1,000 fee for all independent flight training operators and a $2,500 fee for an aircraft owned certified flight instructor. And that's on a cost recovery basis for staff time associated with not necessarily the changes to the minimum standard, but really the issuance of a commercial operating permit, and then the issuance of gate cards, cleaning and maintenance of the simulator room, and use of our facilities. Most airports have fees associated with commercial activities. For these small commercial activities, we have not yet had a fee, but considering the activity that we believe we're going to have around this topic, we would propose to the board that we do have a fee associated that with the cost recovery method.
Is that annual or?
Yes, it's every year.
Thank you.
That also helps us, to check insurance and make sure they have the proper paperwork and insurance in place when they're operating off our airport.
It does not say that in the fiscal impact that it's per year. I assume that you've got that in the
It'll be in the fee
minimum
schedule.
in the fee schedule. Okay.
It's the annual fee.
Yeah, and we already vet operators through the insurance and their credentials, but there's more pieces connected to the aircraft and other pieces going this new route. So I think there's some additional staff time we're going to incur there.
What is the insurance requirement for this or Sierra Aero or any flight instructor? What is?
Yeah, independent flight instruction is $1 million, $1 million, $1 million per occurrence in aggregate for property liability and damage.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the maximum we can get at this time for that type of activity.
Okay.
Under the standard in our insurance adopted minimum standard for insurance coverage, there is aircraft rental and charter, aircraft maintenance, and those types of facilities have greater limitations. And I want to say, Mary, that they're $2 million, $4 million. I'd have to check on that, but they're definitely higher than the $1 million, $1 million.
Okay.
No questions for me. You're on mute, Kat.
Rick, do you have any questions?
No, I don't.
David Diamond, how about you?
David Diamond does have a question about this. And this is again like thinking about that this is not the Kevin Sloan policy. This is an abstracted policy that has to scale. And before I say this, within the last week I was at the airport and I witnessed an aircraft doing work in a figure eight pattern that kept the airplane right over the airfield, and I noticed it because I was there helping somebody, and I thought there's a pilot who's actually doing a really good job about keeping this pattern on the airfield. And lo and behold, the airplane landed, and it was Kevin Sloan flying it. It was not an airplane that I recognized as being his, but I made a mental note to go and contact the tower and say, whoever that was, we want to thank that person for making that. So I know that Kevin does take noise abatement seriously, but not everybody does. And we still have the noise abatement procedures in here saying independent flight training operator shall be versed and instruct students in Ttad noise abatement procedures. And I mentioned this last time, and I wonder again, why can we not say that it is a requirement to abide by noise abatement procedures in order to maintain the license? Is there a reason that we can't put more teeth into that request?
Yeah. Well, Kevin, you can go ahead and hit it if you want, or
go ahead, Hardy, and I'll follow up. I know Hardy and I talked about you because you'd mentioned that, David, and we talked a little bit about that.
Yeah. this is one of those pieces that's right in that gray area. We cannot place certain encumbrances on permitted activities, aeronautical activities, and so because our procedures are voluntary, there's really a difficulty in saying, well, you can fly here as long as you do A, B, C, and D on those voluntary pieces. And the FAA reserves that right for aircraft in flight with the actual FAA. That would be my most basic answer. In certain conditions with operating permits and commercial operating permits, we can require put a little bit more into that, but there is a line in there where the operator would have the freedom to appeal that. And so we have just said that we ask that they're versed in them and that they follow them. So that would be my basic answer.
And what I would follow up on that, David, is I think maybe what we should do is Hardy and I can call Peter Kirsch and get the strongest language that we can get into this policy that is legally available to us to do exactly what you're saying. And we could do that, and I imagine we could come up with some language that is probably a little stronger than what we have, but isn't subject to a Part 13 complaint or something like that we could get.
I think that would be. I mean, I'm not going to speak for Kevin Sloan. My guess is that Kevin Sloan would not have an objection to that because he does pay attention to that and he is concerned about that. But again, this has to scale and it has to apply to others who might not. So I feel like if we can have something like that, I think it would be awesome. And I'm really very thankful to see this policy coming along like this. I think this was a good step in the right direction. Thank you. That's it for me.
Okay, thank you very much. And we'll get the legal language on that, make a modification if we can, and then we'll get this started.
Great, thank you. Mary, did you have something else?
I do. I mean, just in terms of noise abatement procedures, it's kind of that same thing. Shall be versed and instruct students in Ttad noise abatement procedures. And you're going to beef that up as best you can
we'll
within legal criteria. But in terms of versed and instruct students in noise abatement procedures, in the emergency landing opportunities, and in the greenhouse gas aspects, I mean, it's education as well. And I'd like to see that as part of it as well. It's just a piece that I would like to see. The other aspect is just for interest here, later when we get to the operations and comment report, on February 5th, there were 72 touch and goes in one day. And 408 touch and goes in the month, which, you know, if you average it out, which averages we know don't mean anything, but that's still like 13 a day. But they happen in bulks. To have 72 touch and goes, if you live in, I mean, assuming that they're on 1129, because they might be some on 1129 and some on 220. But if you are in the neighborhoods experiencing that, 72 is excessive. And I'm wondering, you know, and again, it's not geared towards Kevin Sloan, but how this is also a Kirsch thing is in terms of, you know, I understand pilots need to practice. I understand, and I want them to practice, but 72 touch and goes in one day. If you lived over on the south end, you know, Sierra Meadows, Winter Creek, you're ready to like jump off a bridge. Is there some aspect that can be tapped into this that I don't know that we can limit touch and goes, but how do we ask any of these people to say, you know, help me here, figure that's a lot, 72 in one day.
Hey, Mary, can I ask a quick question?
Wait, Kevin, before you go, I just want to say one thing to address what Mary is talking about. One of the things that I would love, and and I'm not going to get off topic on here because I know that this is not about the pilots group, which is coming up, but to have the kind of thing in the pilots group that we have Kevin Sloan come in there and explain to people the traffic pattern that he was using when he was doing his practice that was actually keeping his airplane right over I mean, I think that this, those numbers might be in the data, but what I saw was I don't think anybody outside the airport even knew what he was doing. that because it was so tight inside the airport. And I think it's the kind of thing that if we could educate pilots on that practice, then that might actually be a good thing.
So put that in the bike rack, Kevin, or whoever's going to be doing the pilot group. But and again, this isn't geared towards Kevin Sloan. This is geared towards anybody who comes in a future condition, and they might think doing 72 touch and goes is reasonable with a new student. And this ties to what you can have Kirsch say or include to put some limit on that, because that's excessive.
Was it all the same student?
I don't know.
No,
all
it
it
would have
is
been multiples. Nobody's done that many at one time, but it was
it the same instructor?
It's the same? Yeah, it could have been the same instructor. It could have just been somebody out playing.
It could have been.
And it could have been
from
5
Reno,
people.
You know, yeah. We get other aircraft that do touch and goes from other airports that come visit us as we go to other airports from our airport. I'll definitely look at that and talk that through and ask Peter about that. I think it's hard to limit those, but I don't want to give up. I mean, I'm not saying there isn't things we could do, but definitely that's a good Peter question and a topic for the pilot group, which we're getting our first meeting together here really soon.
Mary, was that March 5th or February 5th?
It was on February 5th, Saturday. There were 203 operations, including 72 touch and goes.
So I'm trying to look up who was flying on those days. Thankfully, it wasn't me, by the way.
We don't throw names. I
know. Well, it's more for educating them. I'm betting that the 72 was actually 72 operations, which translates to 36 landings, because the tower doubles every cycle.
I understand.
Like that. So with those numbers, it was probably 36 landings.
And 36 departures.
Yeah. So again, what we as a pilots group can do is kind of take a little bit of what David Diamond observed. And
like Diamond Dave.
I like Diamond Dave.
We can use that and educate the pilot community on what would be probably a safer, quieter pattern for that kind of work. And I'll work with Larry on the tower, in the tower with that as well.
Great. And again, this change in policy is not geared towards you. It's trying to look ahead 5 years or next year or what we can do, because certain neighborhoods are heavily impacted.
Yeah, I completely understand. I did want to take a second and just discuss, I talked to Hardy about the fees that are being discussed for this particular program. Hardy, do you happen to know what a commercial operating permit costs for like Sierra Aero or somebody like that?
So it varies between building and ground, because the cost recovery may come through different methods. So for example, skydiving and dirt leases, ground leases, buildings, it all varies. This is the first time that we've ever done a cost recovery on somebody who's not paying rent. And so that's kind of for this particular piece. We're in new territory here for that.
I think. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that with Sierra Aero, they're paying substantially more to operate. With their lease and the hangar and everything else and other things that we charge them. This would be similar to, and I know the town of Truckee doesn't charge this, but I've got a lot of experience with these in past places I've worked of a business license, where every year a business pays a fee to the city or the county, to help with the administrative expenses of regulating the business community to make sure it's fair and equitable for everyone. And so having an annual fee for cost recovery for the folks that use our facilities to run a business is, that's a very, in our opinion, that's a very fair thing to put out there. And we do that with, like, another one is anyone that wants ramp access privileges to companies that provide services to aircraft for transportation. they have an annual fee and a permit that they have to get to be able to drive out on the ramp to an aircraft. And so it's in a similar fashion as that.
Yeah, I don't disagree with having some kind of fee, but I'm not. You know, you're a person who owns an aircraft isn't a zero revenue person. We are required to have a hangar. We do have a hangar, and I even think per square foot I pay more for my hangar than Sierra Aero actually pays for their hangar. It's not about that anyway. That's just a mathematical scenario that I don't think makes sense. But $2,500 to me is probably in my opinion, and I own businesses downtown. I do pay user fees to the town of Truckee in those businesses, and they certainly gross a lot more than I ever will gross doing my business. So it just seems on a percentage wise, $2,500 is pretty high, especially on an annual basis. I'm not a nonprofit, but I'm darn close to it. And I could show you that in my tax returns.
So, you know, I have to defer to staff who has a better sense of what things cost. So, you know, I can support what staff has put together for this. And
I do as well. I think, well, I got a couple things. My turn, Kat?
Go ahead, Teresa.
I kind of want to echo what Mary said and say this is not a Kevin policy. And we like Kevin. He's nice. He's agreeable. He obeys the rules and all those things. But let's say we get some less friendly person who flies in and pays their $2,500 and they are doing 150 touch and goes a day. And we have no teeth to do anything about that. I just want to make sure we're thinking through that because Kevin's great. And I think this policy is great. But when you guys are talking about Kirsch, what can we put in so that we can say no in the future if we want to? And then as far as fees, sorry, Kevin, I don't agree with you. I think that this is fine. It's $210 a month or something. It's not that much. And you own an airplane. You got to have some money to own an airplane. Just saying.
He owns more than one.
So I guess in this one, I'm with Mary all the way.
I'm not okay with that. I need to take a moment here just to contemplate being on the same side of something.
I think we should definitely do it, and for the right reasons. I just do think if we can get some teeth in it, in case we get some other offender where we have to put asterisks in what we want to call them, you know, can we get rid of them? Is there an out?
Well, and I would also tell you that the fee isn't all directed right at, I mean, the fee that we charge, you know, as we said, about $210 a month, that also is to help us monitor and maintain the policy so that people aren't operating in competition with folks that are, you know, the Kevin Sloans and others and Sierra Aero that try to maintain. That's the whole point of a business license, is to maintain a fair, competitive process on your in your community, and we're kind of doing something similar here that is well supported in, you know, local government for eons. And so we think those fees are fair. It's, you know, it's what about $80, a little more than $80 for someone who doesn't own an airplane to do the same thing. And we provide facilities for them to meet with their students daily if they need to. And those that's public property that should have some cost recovery mechanism. So I'm fine with the fee too.
Does this include access to the flight simulator as well?
Yeah, so the flight simulator is accessible to all Truckee Airport District constituents, pilots or non-pilots, can access that through a system. And so, you know, there is a process you go through with instructors to schedule those, but yes, that provides access to the simulator also, which we encourage, and it gets a lot of use, which I think Kevin would argue or would confirm that does keep planes out of the sky when they using the simulator for training.
All right. Does the board have any more questions about this? So I'll open it up to public comment. Is there any public comment? Don't see any hands. Does someone want to make a motion?
I will move to approve the district standards as outlined by staff.
With the changes about noise abatement procedures, including emergency landing, greenhouse gas education, and whatever you can find from Kirsch.
I accept your amendment to my motion.
And I'll second
I'll
that.
second it. Oh, there you go.
You can have it.
You authored
Me and
it.
you.
It's all
Me
you,
and
Mary.
Teresa.
All right.
Can I just add, this is a Brent question. Are we allowed to make a motion based on something that we don't know? Like, we don't know what Kirsch is going to come back with. Is it okay for us to just leave that as a variable to say, do your best?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I mean, yeah, you've given directions, but yes, you can leave it subject to, expert input.
The language I have on that, just for clarity, is get the strongest language as possible on NAP compliance, and then also touch and goes and some of those things. Is what we'll talk to.
Yep.
And our president has to sign that, so
Yeah.
it's not, someone on the board does have to read it.
Right.
And we can bring it back any month anyone wants to look at it again if anyone wants to see it again.
Okay.
I'd like to just see it when it is completed after that, but I don't need to see it in a board meeting.
Okay.
All right, Kevin, roll call.
Yeah, Vice President Diamond,
Yes.
Director Hetherington,
Yes.
Director Odette,
Yes.
President Rolfe,
Yes.
and Director Stevens.
Yes.
All right. Way to go, Kevin Sloan.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
And thanks, Hardy, Kevin, for the work on that.
Yeah, Hardy did the lion's share of the work on this. Appreciate him looking that policy over.
Okay, moving on to item number 10, the classification and compensation study, salary range review and possible action. Kevin?
Yeah, so I'll just kick this off, and Lauren is on the call too to answer any questions. But at our last meeting, the board asked us to return with just an amendment to some of the actions that were taken in December on the class and comp study to revisit the Appendix D, which is the salary recommendations from Bryce Consulting. And so you'll have that there in front of you. There's two things that we've got in the packet. One is Appendix D, which is what the board is asking, or which the staff is asking the board to approve, which just adjusts the market ranges for employee salaries. There may be a couple of employees that we adjust in there, as we talked about back in December, as I look at that. But overall, the employee merit increases have already been completed for 2022, and those would stand. But in future years, we would be using these ranges for adjustments to employee compensation. And so the first attachment there, which has the blue heading, is Appendix D, and that's what we're asking you to approve. We also included another attachment that has some yellow headings on that. That is the current one, just so you can see for comparison purposes of what this is. And so, Lauren, anything else you want to add to what I have there?
Nope, you did well.
Okay, thank you.
All right, questions. Teresa, you go first.
Yeah, I guess this is a Kevin question. Your staff report does not have a fiscal impact. Highly unusual. Can you tell us what the fiscal impact of adopting this would be?
I don't know this year because we wouldn't be adjusting anybody's salary. Again, the salary survey mentioned 2 or 3 employees that it recommended that we look at, but they were maxed out. So there really wasn't anywhere to go. And so I have to go back through this if the board adjusts it and look at what that is. It wouldn't be, there might be some small modifications to a few of those folks as I have that option to look at that. But what would happen, it'd be subsequent years that the impact would be seen. It would actually be over multiple years, but we typically have anywhere from 2.5% to 3.5% merit increases a year to our staff, but there wouldn't be anything new this year in 2022. So the fiscal impact has already essentially occurred based on our prior pay scale. So
Okay.
does that make sense? I apologize, it's a little wordy.
It does make sense, although it doesn't answer my question. But let me just say for the record, I support this and will absolutely vote to do it. But you must have some sense. Is this $100,000? Is it $500,000? Is this $1 million?
Yeah, changes that I might make now would be probably less than 15,000 on the overall payroll, 15 to 20 in there potentially. And again, I've got to go through that with a few of the employees that it referenced that are substantially below market. In 2023 is when we would start using this for
first. And what I was concerned about, and one reason I wanted this on the agenda, was we have 4 employees who are bumping up against the salary limits. And I didn't hear that. And we all voted unanimously to accept the salary thing without the limits. And had I known that we had people bumping up against the limits, I wouldn't have voted for that motion. And I totally support Teresa's comment about employees are hard to find. You've got Morgan's that closed in Truckee, and you have the bakery next door closed. Mostly what I've heard is not able to get employees. So I'm in favor of this sample motion on this process where we accept the salary limits, the salary survey, and increase the limits.
All right, Mary.
No comments.
David.
I just have one, and Teresa, I don't know if you can back me up on this because we were in this executive ad hoc together. I'm so confused by something. The staff report says approving the salary wage range recommendations will not adjust individual personnel's current rate of pay. And then we've been told that there are salaries that are being held back by this. And I recall in the meeting that we had last year, Kevin, with Teresa, that we had asked, is anybody being held back by this now? And I could have sworn that you told us, no, that there were like a few things, but you had the money to make whatever that adjustment was on this. I mean, I'm not trying to hold anything back. I'm just not sure. Like, again, going to what Teresa was talking about the 22 versus 23, it was my understanding in the last month or so that in fact people were being held back by this, and that we wanted to look at it now because when we approve this, that we would retroactively correct that. And now I'm totally confused.
Okay, well, I apologize if I've confused the issue. I can maybe clarify this a little bit. So employees that are topped out still receive a merit increase. It's just it's a lump sum one-time payment. So if somebody is at the top of the range, we still can give them a merit increase, but it's just it's a block of money that they get in January for that 3%. What it doesn't do is it doesn't move their range. And so all those employees did receive those, and that's kind of what I was referring to. The allocation study mentions 3 or 4 positions that are underpaid. They're essentially saying you're under market. But a couple of those employees were topped out. So it was really hard to go anywhere else from where we were. And so that's what we're talking about now. So when I say, probably what we could have put here a little bit better is across the board changes. We're not doing across the board changes to pay beyond what we've just done in January based on this. We just need those ranges to fit market, which makes us more competitive, and it also allows us to adjust employees that we find that are below market.
Kevin, could I also say something? David, what it did also do is for those employees that did hit their salary max and got a merit pay increase, the problem with that merit pay increase is it isn't qualified for CalPERS. So we did not get any CalPERS contributions towards that differentiation, that merit increase. Just so you're aware.
Yeah, and that happens for all the employees that aren't classic members, and I think we have 7 or 8 that are classic, where it does count for them. But the PEPRAs, and I think Mark Lamb's in his own category. There was one change we made when he came on. that those aren't PERSable. Those things, there is that difference for them also.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there any public comment about this? I don't see anybody. Does somebody want to make a motion?
I do. I move to approve the 2021 Classification Compensation Plan Appendix D salary recommendations as presented.
Can I offer an amendment and implement it this year?
And implement it this year.
I'll second.
All right, roll call.
Yeah. Perfect. Get my list. I always want to keep the order right. Vice President Diamond.
Yep.
Director Hetherington.
Yes.
Director Odette.
Yes.
President Rolfe.
Yes.
And Director Stevens.
Yes.
Thank you. On behalf of staff, I express our deep appreciation for you reconsidering that and looking at that. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Okay, on to item 11, district-owned Cessna 172. Kevin?
Yeah, so as I know the board's aware, 5901 Golf is the Cessna 172 JTA, runs on jet fuel and has acquired a noise profile. The airport's been running that plane since about 2018 as part of our noise abatement programs that we instituted at that time. And the program's been pretty successful over the years. However, we have found that the aircraft had an engine a power failure. It wasn't a complete power failure, but it had a loss of power. But the pilot and the instructor were able to come back to the airport with no issue and land. But upon inspection, because the plane was still producing some power, but they were able to come back, land. Upon inspection, it has a cylinder that's essentially blown, for lack of a better term, which means that's an overhaul. And so the engine was just about timed out anyways. As you remember in our budget discussion, we had budgeted money for an engine replacement, a prop replacement. But talking this through and looking at the program, working with Mountain Lion and Sierra Aero, who has managed that program, because Cessna has essentially discontinued support locally for the aircraft engine. They support the airframe, but the aircraft engine, is Continental, and so we have to work with folks in Germany to keep this thing, operational, even to get parts. And so we would suggest that the board declare that as surplus property and we sell it. The used airplane market right now is extremely favorable to what we're trying to do, where we may be able to recover most of the capital acquisition costs for the aircraft if we sell it, while the market's still high, and just move on. And I think that the program's had some success, but we're recommending to the board that we surplus that aircraft and sell it. And by the way, the plane's not flying anymore. It's not flying. It's grounded.
Can I go first?
Yes.
I don't always have to go first. Well, would we be replacing it? Is question number one. I know that's a decision to be made in the future, but would we be replacing it? And number two is, I'd like Sierra Aero's opinion on this as well.
Yeah, perfect. I can answer the first question. I think Sierra Aero's on here. My conversation was with, I guess I talked with Chris and with Jessica a little bit about it. But just to answer the first question is, no, we don't really, there's some electric aircraft technology that's coming that may be interesting that we want to look at, but it's not quite there. There is no other product out there that we could find that would do what 01 Golf is doing in a sustainable way with the support that we need. But with that, I'd turn it over to Jessica or Chris Barbera.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. Well, first of all, we also agree that it's been a very successful program. It's been a great plane. It does have had a lot of challenges, though, simply because any parts has to come from Germany, and Cessna has not been as supportive as we had hoped. So it came with a lot of challenges, and at this point, we agree with staff and would recommend that the board goes with the staff direction.
Thank you. That's it for me,
Jessica,
Kat.
before you go away, can I ask you a follow-up question? So it seems to me like early when we were talking about the what Kevin Sloan was interested in, part of the rationale was that there was, and this goes back a little bit deeper, that CFIs were having a hard time getting access to an airplane, and now this one's gone. So what does this mean for your operations there? I mean, are you going to add another airplane? Are you going to stick with the one, or what? How does this affect you? That was for you, Jessica.
That's for Jessica. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't realize I was muted. It's a good question, David, and something we're discussing. When we made this agreement with the airport and board back in 2017 and 18, we grounded one of our own planes in favor of the more quiet plane. That was part of the partnership we did. Now, obviously, after a couple of years of holding on to an airplane, we decided to sell it, and that was obviously pre-COVID. So we find ourselves in a situation now with obviously wanting to replace this plane, but probably not going to be able to, because it's very difficult to buy a used 172 right now. So we don't really know, how we're going to do this. We still have, flying instructors that use our planes. So I think the goal will be to try to replace it somehow, but we're working on that.
Thank you.
All right. Mary, do you have any questions or comments?
No.
And Rick? Okay.
No.
Is there any public comment? No. All right. Does somebody want to make a motion?
I will. I move to authorize staff to declare November 5901 Golf as surplus property, engage with an aircraft broker, and sell the aircraft for the best offer subject to policy instruction 319, surplus property disposal.
A question, as is?
Yeah, we're not. We're.
Yeah.
I don't think
Yes.
we need to.
I second that motion.
All right. Roll call.
Roll call.
Vice President Diamond,
Yes.
Director Hetherington,
Yes.
Director Odette,
Yes.
President Rolfe,
Yes.
Director Stevens.
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Moving along.
Moving along.
Okay. Number 12, review of proposed Ttad district guiding principles and goals.
Yeah, so worked on this after a lot of good input from the board at our workshop and then in our board meeting. And this is, kind of our staff draft to get something in front of you. There's a lot of 2022 projects in here, and I was kind of thinking some of these may go beyond 2022, 2023, farther out. But I wanted to get this in front of you and talk quickly about two things. Is obviously any modifications, changes, or edits, happy to make. There's also a lot of questions in here and that need to be answered. And so you'll see later on the agenda, and I can talk about it briefly now, but I think the best place to start with these guiding principles is a board workshop, and maybe even look at those on a quarterly basis for a few quarters, maybe 3 quarters, and really dive into these at a higher level of detail, which may save you time trying to break that all down tonight. But I'm trying to put something together for late April, early May, an offsite in person with some good food, where we all could sit around and really go through these and start with the culture question, and then go into some of the other questions that are outlined in these guiding principles and goals. And then some of these things we're already working on, and we're not going to wait to get going on some of these things, but some of them that have more board dialogue and discussion, I would suggest we handle it in that kind of a meeting.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Yep,
I
go
agree.
ahead, David. Yep.
If you can ever get a date.
We're going to work really hard at that.
So I just wanted to add to this. The first note I got, I'm so happy to see this structure. It's like I've been through this in other organizations, and when you start structuring stuff under the stuff that's important to you, the decisions are so much easier to make, and you find yourself acting more consistently. So I'm really happy to see that. Under guiding principle number 1, safe, high quality services and facilities. The pilots group is not mentioned in any of these, and I would love to see it in this one. It kind of does fit into other categories here, but I really feel like the pilots group is primarily for the pilots. That this is a benefit for us initially and then secondarily for a reduced community impact through that increased education. So I would love to see that one added there. And also on guiding principle 3, investments for sustained community benefit. I'd like to add the concept of the tiny home village, if that's something that we could look into for the workforce housing for non-agency, like for our small businesses and all that. I feel like I know that discussion hasn't gone very far, but if just to put it in as a placeholder for something that maybe we could look into. I would love to see that there.
Isn't that number 6? Plan for non-aviation land on soaring. Oh, that's soaring. Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of goes with 7 with the housing thing, but leasing land for maybe a private. Yeah. Well, let's talk about it at that workshop.
Sounds good.
I have some ideas on that.
Yeah. Let's do it.
Yeah. And by adopting this, does it become fixed, or with our workshop, can this be adapted?
It can always be adapted.
Okay. Because I have some other thoughts, but because I think this is a great structure, but there are some things in here that need to be fleshed out or unfleshed. Absolutely.
It can always be adjusted. I think it's a living, breathing document that we'll constantly work through.
Okay.
So Kevin, are you thinking that we have 3 workshops, and are we going to prioritize?
Well, what I'd like to propose, and this is in my GM report a little bit, so we just cover it now real quick. But I think I'd like to get us in a quarterly cycle for maybe at least 2 or 3 quarters, where we'll sit maybe spend 6 hours. I've got Shauna Doherty all lined up. She's an excellent facilitator, and not only facilitator, she's going to document and make what we're doing actionable and pretty, so that it's something that we're drawn to and that we want to use. She's really good at that. And so she's going to come in and facilitate. She's going to meet with all of us and talk through. And this is if you want to do this, and hire her to do that. We have some money to do that. It's not a lot. I think it's worth every penny. I just went through this with the housing JPA with her, and then we'll have these facilitated meetings, and through that process we'll be able to really beef this up and really get aligned, all of us together on these 3 principles. And so we would have the first one here late April, early May, and I'll do some doodles to get some time. And then at that meeting, our last item of business will be to set the next one. And so we'll be able to work together so that we know in 3 months here's the next one, or in 2 months, whenever we do it, and we do at least, I think 3 would get us far along, and we may find that we like that format permanently. Because workshopping is just good. I mean, we don't do enough of that. And different boards have had different levels of interest in that, but I think this board likes to workshop. I do.
Yeah. Okay, so you want us to go ahead and pass this, and then we'll work on it?
I think if you're ready, if the board feels good about putting this down, passing this or accepting it, you don't even have to use the word approve. Okay. You could accept these as our guiding principles with the auspices that we're going to continually ebb and flow and work on this as our guiding direction. But at least it gets us, heading in the right direction, and it also helps staff. I can take these and start working, because some of these things, like our communications plan, that's coming to you. We're working on some of this stuff. So,
okay. Is there any public comment on the goals? No public comment. So, does somebody want to make a motion?
I'll move to accept the Truckee Tahoe Airport District guiding principles, goals, tasks, and timeline as discussed and attached with the following modifications. Well, there are no modifications. Oh, there are two. I know.
Yeah, 2 modifications. Yeah.
I'll second.
Roll call.
Okay, roll call. Vice President Diamond.
Yes.
Director Hetherington.
Yes.
Director Odette.
Yes.
President Rolfe.
Yes.
Director Stevens.
Yes.
So look for Lisa will help me with this. I haven't told her that yet, but she's so great. She'll help me. You'll get a doodle with a couple of weeks of dates for a. I'm thinking it'd be like an 8:30 to 1 o'clock, or we could do 11 to 5. Whichever mornings or evenings. But we'll get you some doodles out there for the workshop.
And maybe setting up 3. Because some people get our plan. If we wait to the workshop and then try and pick the next one, if we're kind of planning 3 to doodle 3.
Yeah, that's up to all of you. If 3 months out is, if you'd like to, because we'd be 6 months now planning that. If that's I'm happy to do that.
Yeah.
I say yes.
I would say go for it, Kevin. And if something comes up emergency-wise and somebody
we can modify.
We could retry it.
Yeah. It's good to have it on the calendar, even if it's months away, because then you plan around it usually.
All right, we'll do 3.
Okay. All right. Where are we? Last one.
We had a motion, right?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we did.
Yeah,
that.
right. We're ready to go to ACIP. Or did we roll call?
Did we roll call?
Did we vote?
Yeah, we did.
I thought we voted.
We did.
All right.
And then everybody started talking. My bad.
Yeah. Okay. Capital Improvement Program.
All right. So this one is a lot of fun. The FAA dropped on us a couple of weeks ago. Was it? They give us a lot of. It was probably 3 weeks ago. And as Congress is moving pretty quickly with the bipartisan infrastructure legislation, they wanted us to update our airport capital improvement program to include eligible projects for this funding. So as I mentioned, there's $25 billion, but that breaks down into lots of different categories. And so there is funding available for these projects that we've put on here. So I'll go through those briefly. This is our current ACIP that you already approved back in the fall, with the addition of some new things that I'll go over. There's one other item I thought of that we may want to consider. It is just like these guiding principles, this does breathe and live. And so nothing's in concrete. Matter of fact, some of this stuff we're probably going to get a red line, and then I'll erase their red line and send it back, and then it'll get redlined again. That's kind of the process that we go through with them. And so it'll go through a review process, and we are not, by putting something on our ACIP, we are not obligated to take funding. We don't have to. Sometimes, like for instance, you'll see the runway 1634, I put that on here. If we don't start at least talking to them about that now, then some of those things can take years and years and years. We don't have to put that on, but it's something I thought if we wanted to, we could start showing and letting the public that's participating in our meeting, no decision's been made on that. But we're trying to give the FAA an overview of the things we're thinking about. That's what they want, and that we may want to apply for at a future date. And so that's what this is. And so the things that we've added is the loader that we had talked about. We think that with our entitlement funding under what you'll see in the category AIG, which is all part of the bipartisan infrastructure, which is different than AIP. I'm sorry this is so confusing for those that don't work in the airport improvement program world. The AIG is the new money, and that's about $290,000 a year that we think we're going to get over 5 years, in addition to the $150,000 entitlement we get under AIP. The AIP money is spoken for essentially with our AIP projects that we approved in the fall, but these AIG funding is the new funding. And so what we did for the next 3 years with the AIG, knowing that we can adjust this next year if we need to, is to, for next year, apply for the loader and use our money to get that snow removal loader with our entitlement AIG funding. I also put in here an environmental assessment. If the board is interested, the environmental assessment for the 1634, that we could use entitlement funds for. And so we're showing it there. And then you could see, and it's not highlighted, but it's there in 2025, item 6, is there's a separate pot of money for air traffic control towers, both contract towers, which we are not, and non-Fed owned towers, which is what we are. There's funding to build towers in this bill. I think that's a big one that we want to get in there. Is about $15 million, which is design, construction, engineering. And you can see it has no match. That's 100% funded on those projects in the AIG program. And so we have that in there. And then I also put in site work and construction of a hangar row. And that could be, and I'm calling it a replacement hangar row, not a new hangar row, but replacing one of our old aging hangars with a new hangar row. There may be funding. It's a low priority, but we put that in there. And then you could see getting into 2026 and 2027 of putting in funding for that runway 1634 construction. Whether or not that'll qualify, I don't know, but until we ask and submit, we'll find out the eligibility of that by submitting this. So this is what I'd like to put in. The other option or idea that I just thought about is there is also a terminal fund in the BIL. So if we wanted to add the expansion of this building, there's funding for those kind of projects also. And so I could put that on here too if there's interest in that. That's probably $2 million, well, $1.5 to $2 million. So that's the revised program. Nothing set in stone. We can modify, change it later, but they want to know what we're thinking.
All right, David Diamond.
I've got a few questions for you, Kevin. On the on the one hand, I love, of course, let's be asking for all this stuff. Is there any concern that asking for one item would make it less likely that we would get something else? So should there, meaning do we run a risk by not prioritizing specific things that we might not get what we really want?
Yeah, I'd tell you that the prioritization that we have in here by year, they look at that as how our priorities are by the year that we allocate things. As we stick them in there, that's what they consider. You can see right there, the first column is project priority number. So we can move those around, but they look at that as our priority. And I would say I don't think that they would say, no, we're not going to fund this because you asked for too much or it's too convoluted, so we're not going to do something. They usually will go through and talk about each one of those and tell us what the score is, and then tell us that this is just not going to happen, and then we can push back a little bit, and then eventually it kind of flushes itself out. Okay, next question. Just for clarification on the control tower, you're saying that we could construct this control tower and we would still maintain, like, for example, Midwest, it wouldn't have to become an FAA control tower? No, we wouldn't. No, the only way we would have to lose Midwest is if we went into the contract tower program, because Midwest does not have this region. Okay, so the construction of a tower is not moving necessarily toward having an FAA tower. Correct. So, for instance, even like at Palo Alto or some of those towers, those are owned by airports and they maintain them, but the staffing is provided by the contract tower program. In some of those airports, like even the South Lake Tahoe airport, that tower down there that's not operational, that is owned by the city and they maintain it. The FAA doesn't maintain it. And so this would be in that same boat. We would have it, they would build it, but then we would have to maintain this facility in perpetuity. Okay. And that would be like it would have bathroom facilities and it would have, they wouldn't have to be, everything. Okay, great. And then the last one, just on the terminal, to be clear about that, if we did do the expansion of the terminal, and I kind of think that might be a good thing to look into, how much does that save us a year in the office space that we're... I think we could bring everybody back. The way we designed that, we could bring everybody back. So how much a year would that save us? It's $45,000 a year, I believe, is our lease over there. I have to get the exact. Kelly probably knows it off the top of her head. Okay, that's all I've got. Thank you. Did I have that right, Kelly? It's about 20 or 40 something. Our lease.
I'm looking it up right now.
That's a month, Kevin. That's a month.
No, that's $43,000
a month.
It's not 43,000 a month.
Oh.
It's about yeah.
About $4,000 a month.
Yeah.
And the utilities associated with it, but we are tied in for how long over there? 5 years?
2 more years. Well, over 2 years.
Through 24.
Yeah.
It's $39.17 a month for $47,000 a year.
Okay.
Close.
And I don't believe Kevin's estimate at $1.5 million is correct.
It might not. Well, so just remember, we've already designed it. It's already, all the design and construction engineering has been done.
All right.
Yeah, you're right. It's
Are we gonna
dollars.
how about we put some real money on the over/under, Kevin?
Yeah. No, you're probably right. It's probably closer to 2 million, and by next week it'll be 3 million. The way things are going.
So that would show up for getting funding in 2023, so that in 2024 they could move back.
That would be what I would suggest, is we add that in. I'm going to look more at that terminal funding criteria, but there's a lot of money for terminals, and I started looking through that going, hey, I think that qualifies under that, so I'd like to add that one in there too.
I think that's a good idea, Kevin.
And I think that's a 90% funding, so we don't have to pay 10%. And it adds another meeting room, adds another public meeting room if we build that.
Teresa, do you have anything?
I do. I have a couple questions. Well, one editorial comment. Kevin really wants that loader. Really bad. Keeps coming back.
That's what my guys are telling me, and that's what I'm going to bat for him. Dave's Honda, he can tell you all about it. So.
No, thanks. 7 and 8. Are they the same hangar row replacement?
Yeah, it'd be the same thing. So we would get design and engineering money one year, then construction the next year. What that would be essentially, it would be the hangar row we've already done an analysis on, which is those super duper Ts. And those would go on the west side of the airport. And then we would probably decommission one of the hangar rows that has roof issues. And we don't have imminent roof issues. We don't have any roofs that are an imminent failure. I'm trying to look 5 to 10 years down the road where we need to start thinking about what we're going to do with some of our 40-plus-year-old hangar rows. And for all our pilots that are listening, we are very aware of all the roof conditions and are programming ahead to address those things.
Okay. And just clarifying point, anything we put on here does not necessarily mean we're going to build it, even if they approve the money, correct?
Exactly. Yeah, they can offer us a grant and we can say no thanks.
Okay. So I don't see anything on here about shade hangers on the field. Is that something that we could put here?
Yeah, we could add a shade hangar row, in the same thing. The hangars are lower priority. I should let everyone know that it's likely those will not get funded, but you never know. And sometimes funding.
If we don't put it on the list, it definitely won't get funded. Yeah. So we should
I
add
could
it,
do a shade
in my
hangar row
opinion.
too if you want. Yeah.
And then what about? I know we're redoing the master plan, but we have currently future hangars. Right? I mean, there's some that are not built that were in the prior master plan.
Yes.
Why wouldn't we put this on here just to get the FAA thinking about our allowance?
We could.
We don't have to agree, and the future board, it's years from now, right? It's not going to be any of us voting on it, but shouldn't we put it on here?
We'll let the board talk about that one. I can give you, there's 2 executive hangar rows on the master plan that we call out for building. And we could put those on there later in after like 2030 if you'd like. Those are in the current master plan.
Well, that for me just goes back to is the FAA going to be making priority decisions for us? Like if they see a big chunk of money for something like that and it's not as important to us, might they say, okay, here you can go do your this, but you can't go do that? Yeah, not necessarily. They'll want, what they're going to do is they look for the priority projects, things that have what they call the NPR, their national priority ranking number, and hangars are way down at the bottom. And so it's usually if you save up some entitlement money and you really want to do it, they may put a little bit in and you can go do these revenue projects. But they
they tend to shy away from that kind of stuff. And so we could put those in, but I think the hanger rows I have in here are going to get, I'm going to get the stink eye pretty strong on those. And they'll say, let's concentrate on your tower. That's something that we can really get around, and so then I can say, well, I'm giving some stuff up. I'm giving up these hangers so I can get this tower. I mean, it could be something like that a little bit on how that works, but yeah, I think it's highly unlikely we're going to get hanger money, but you never know. You just don't know. There's been things, pavement and hanger rows, that I thought we would never get, and then they say, yeah, we're going to fund paving between hanger rows.
So can I ask you then, just to Teresa's point, was there a strategic reason you didn't add those in there?
Just because we had so much other stuff, I guess, and those we would put, maybe a little bit. I think one thing that if we can somehow, when we're talking about hangars, the hangar facility that I think would make the biggest change to our wait list, both with T's and with executive hangars, is the super duper T hanger row that can hold PC-12s and King Airs. That would reduce the hangar wait list on both. So if there's a way to get funding for that, I'd rather them concentrate on that than being maybe distracted by other hangar rows that we put on there. Shade hangers are pretty cheap. We could put that on there, and there is some demand for those.
And then, so on line 7 and 8, that set line 7 and 8, was that what you were talking about?
No, this is 7 and 8 is actually the super duper T hangers.
That's what I mean. So the one that you said that would be most beneficial to us is on 7 and 8.
7 and 8, yeah.
Okay. I would personally, I'd be fine just leaving it at that, because I fear that somebody will look at this and just go, oh, come on, these people are asking for everything, and maybe not take some of it as seriously as we'd like it to be taken. Also, so we're talking about like here back going up to 2030. When do we get an opportunity to do this again?
Every year.
Yeah. So maybe not be entirely crazy about later on years.
You're gonna be looking at this again in October.
Yeah. I don't know, Teresa, if that works for you. I mean, my sense would be like, let's maybe not make it look like pure fiction.
I like what Teresa's saying, and let me put these two and let me see what they do with it.
Yeah.
And then in October we may be able to put the others and see, because if I get a lot, if we get some kind of a positive response, that'll tell me a lot. Where their eyes are immediately gonna go is everything in yellow. That's where they're immediately going to look at and say, what is that? And they already know. I mean, we've met with them on it. They're going to know, and we're telling them that's coming. We've got a report coming to you here in June, July that is going to explain that all, and so they know all about that. I'm really hopeful on the tower. I was really interested in how the FAA set that up. That there is funding for that, and I got to learn more about it. We're still going through the BIL legislation, which they just put out all the 700 pages on it that you have to comb through, but it looks like that has some legs.
So whatever happened, I'm sorry, now that I keep looking at this, these ideas are popping in my head. Whatever happened to our discussion about ATIS?
So the ATIS is, we're moving forward with that. And so
do we not need money for this?
We have that in this year's budget to do it.
Okay.
So some of the earlier comments that were inaccurate about the AWAS and not upgrading the AWAS is 100% functional and was working perfectly, all summer.
Okay.
That's not accurate information. Our AWAS is 100% compliant, working great. The ATIS is the upgrade. Why dump more money into upgrading an AWAS when we're going to put an ATIS in that is even better? So those are AIP eligible, but we have the funding, and Hardy and I are working on that, and we'll be giving you updates on that as we move forward with that.
How much was that, just for?
Hardy, do you know roughly what we're looking at on the ATIS?
Yeah, the technical selection portion isn't done, and it's very wide ranging. So I'm not going to give you a quote right now. It could be as high as 80,000. It could be as low as 22.
Okay,
it's not a huge amount of money.
I know you could get one for your home at that rate.
Yeah.
Okay,
Great.
thank you.
Does anybody have any more comments or questions?
my question is, so we're going to get $445,000 a year for these next 5 years. We get the 295 plus the 150.
Yeah, so all they've told us is what we're getting in 2023, which is 290, but we suspect that'll be the same over the 5 years. And then, yes, the 150 is standard AIP that runs in perpetuity.
Does that have to be spent in the year that it's received, or can it be held?
It can be held for up to 3 to 5 years. I'm not sure if Damon or Brad Muzinski are on here. Sometimes they can help. I always get 3 to 5 mixed up, but we can save that. We can bank that money for multiple. You can see, like on here, we're showing 2 years of AIP that we would use. Well, I think I'll have to look at that. But for the assessment, we're saying we would use 1 year of AIP or AIG money for the environmental assessment for the runway, and then hopefully get them to fund the other half of that. And so we didn't put a lot of the AIG allocation in this because they've only given us 1 year of funding, but we also went ahead and said we'd like to use some of that for the environmental assessment, which they have to do.
Okay, so when I look at the breakout, like the loader is a $240,000 estimate, but our cost at 5%, assuming they fund it, is only $14,300.
Correct.
And can that come out of this 445?
Yes. So on the AIG funding, it could come out of that. The AIP funding, they've already essentially
assigned it to projects.
It's like, for instance, we're getting the runway end identifier light money back. That's right, sitting on my desk right there. I got to.
Of which ours we only had to put $9,874 into that.
Yeah.
So, but we can use some of that money towards our percentage.
Yeah,
so
they let us do whatever we want with our entitlement, but they, as I've said before, I don't want to use the term bait, but I will. They'll say, yes, you can buy that thing for the $300,000 you may have aggregated over 2 years, or we'll give you $4 million to redo taxiway golf.
Right.
But we want your entitlement to do that.
Yeah, because that's really good to know. So there's this other pot of money that we should be aware of.
In 5 years. It's an interesting thing to think about because the AIP, the trust fund that funds our AIP grants, is about $4.5 billion a year, and now Congress has added $25 billion over 5 years to supplement that $4.5 billion. It's a lot of money. And trying to get that all out and get projects done is what everyone's going to be working on for the next, 10 years, because the grants will go over 5 and then it takes years after that because those grants go for at least 5 years once you get it to complete the project. So.
But we can't use it. Can we use the AIG funding on stuff that's not on the AIP?
No, so it has to be on that's why it has to be AIP eligible. As specified in the legislation. So it's AIP, and then there's some specific carve-outs in the legislation and the BIL, as they call the bill legislation. I hate that name. They call it, but.
So these new hangars that are 2024, you've got them at $5.7 million, but for us out the door, it's only $350,000.
Yeah, and it's 2025. The numbers are at the bottom, the years at the bottom, and then
you submit. Okay.
Yeah, if we can get that, it would be about $350,000.
So in that argument, then, shade hangers as being another thing in there. I'm good with it as it is. We'll go in October again.
Yeah, we're going to look at it again.
But what I'm trying to get at is we have this $295,000, which covers our 5% on many of these projects, and that's what I'm trying to get the board to kind of key in with.
I don't know that they'll let us pay our 5% with the BIL with the AIG funds.
Oh, I asked that, and I
apologize. I might have not understood that we can't use that funding to do matches. Unless the grant, some of the grants have no match, like tower construction.
Right.
But when everyone's done, I have some editorial comments.
So So we can't use that for, okay. We've got to still come up with our own match, but we have to use that. So some of that AIG funding will go towards the FAA, the column, the construction cost, the FAA's portion.
Yeah, so you'll see the total construction cost, and then they take our match to help.
Okay.
I mean, what they do is they just don't give us that money. We have to pay it out of ourselves for, to vendors, that portion. And then the state is a bit inconsistent on their funding, but sometimes it's 50,000, sometimes it's 5%. But so
yeah. Okay, thank you.
Teresa?
Well, again, it's editorial. I support it as is, but editorially, I wanted to point out that FAA money is, in fact, still tax dollars that we're all paying in a different format, a huge amount. And my tax bracket, like, this kind of makes me want to throw up, to tell you the truth. But then the second part of it is, where's the need versus want? Like, just because the government said we can spend all this money doesn't mean we have to do that. And the more of this that we keep spending and that Congress keeps giving out is just raising our taxes, our income taxes, after we've already paid property taxes to support everything else. So, I mean, you guys don't have to agree. I'm just editorially saying that, my fundamental bones are not excited about paying more taxes.
And I'll tell you, the AIG funds is borrowed money, whereas the AIP funding is paid for by fuel taxes and way bills and fees that we all pay to use the national airspace system. A lot of that funding, that $4.5 billion, come from there for AIP. But you're right, AIG is just money Congress approved and where
that you were buying in bonds, which is why mortgage rates are going up. But whatever, I'm done on my soapbox. I just,
I paid my taxes today, Teresa. I'm with you.
I'll send you my barf bucket. So what do we need to do?
Just a motion to accept or allow me to submit. What did I write? The sample motion. I don't have that in front of me.
I think you should do public comment, though.
Just accept the. Oh, it's right here. Just accept or. Yeah.
Let's have public comment first, if there's any. Is there any public comment? Okay. Motion.
I don't have it up. I've got it. I move to approve the updated fiscal year 2022-2023 ACIP with its associated AIG projects as attached and recommended. As attached and recommend submittal to the FAA as attached with the addition of a funding request for the terminal.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Roll call.
Roll call. Yeah. Vice President Diamond?
Yes.
Director Hetherington?
Yes.
Director Odette?
I'm going to abstain.
Okay.
It's tax day.
President Rolfe?
Yes.
And Director Stevens?
Yes.
All right. Okay, board committee assignments and ad hoc committee reports.
Yeah, so on the, just on that report, I'll Rick, anything you want to add on the Mountain Housing Council?
No.
All right. We had a great JPA Housing Authority workshop, as I mentioned, with Shauna, and it was interesting. We had all the directors of the 7 organizations and the county CEOs, and everybody was there, plus their alternates. Lauren attended with me, and thought it was a very productive meeting, and a lot of momentum going. I know that people want to see action, and people need to see more action, and that was a constant topic that we talked about, of how to deploy more programs to get more things rolling. But as we've all found, that housing is hard, and we are working on it. I think there's some great things coming, and I can get more into that as I get the final deliverable from that meeting, this strategic plan that we're looking at, and I'll push that out to everybody as soon as you see that. The next thing you'll see from the housing JPA is down payment assistance program that the JPA is going to set up, that each individual member organization can participate at whatever level that they would like. And so you'll see something on that coming forward. Agencies can choose not to do anything to doing whatever they want to do, but it'll all be run through the JPA. Any questions on that?
No.
Next one is the Airport Master Plan Ad Hoc Committee. So you see my summary there, but I'll let that subcommittee, if you have anything you want to report to the group.
Well, we're still plugging ahead, and interesting things are coming out, which maybe we can share at the workshop with everybody. I am wondering, because we've been dealing with the technical aspects, but now we're moving into communications, and we have all the communications scheduled coming ahead, which like not at the virtual, but at the live one, we can all be there. But because I'm more of the technical and not the communications, and wondering about my moving off and bringing David on, if he's okay with that. Can I throw him under the bus? But we all know that David is much better at communications than Mary is, and I'm willing to step out if the rest of the board is acceptable with that.
Before the rest of the board pushes me further under the bus there, is this legal to do, or should, I'm not trying to squirm out of it, because I would appreciate having that opportunity on this, but I just wonder if, for example, if I am now on that ad hoc with Rick, and Rick and I are talking about stuff, at some point in time, might Rick say something that was something he discussed with Mary, that and that's one consideration. And the other thing is that would it be easier if we just sunset this ad hoc committee and then just start a new ad hoc committee about the outreach of this? And then I'm happy to do that with whomever wants to do it, whether it's Rick or somebody else. I don't know. I guess it's a Brent question. I don't want us to get snarled in any kind of a Brown Act claim.
And I appreciate your awareness of those concerns. I don't think that sunsetting this committee and forming a new committee would make any difference. If there was, if it was a new committee and Rick said, the last committee, Mary said this, I think the best thing to do is which I think you've been doing, is reporting what the subcommittee, the ad hoc committee, has been doing. So it's been out in, public meetings and available to the public. If there's a concern, you may want to either agendize this or have a summary of what the two current members have talked about, publicize that, and then there's no concern that there's something going on between amongst a majority of the board.
So purge the ad hoc committee. Everything they know becomes public, and then.
Well, I'm going to tell you real quick, if I could add, the ACT meeting that we did this month had a lot of what the ad hoc committee has been doing, which is now all public. I'm trying to think of things that, and there may be a couple things for our meeting earlier this week that we could briefly mention that would get that, out there. But most of the work that we've been doing is found in that ACT meeting and the recording, I would argue. But
and we're going to have another ACT meeting on the 13th. In April
9th, on the 9th.
13th. April 9th, sorry. 13th, saying the same thing.
And that's David and, go on. Sorry.
You sure it's not you and me again?
I think it's David and Kat.
Yeah, David and Kat, I think is what I have on the list.
Besides, I never remember anything Mary says.
Great.
Brent, would it be enough to add, with Rick and Mary on the call right now, to ask them, is there anything that has not become public that you have both discussed?
That's certainly fair to ask. from a legal viewpoint, I'm not sure if it's fair between Rick and Mary to ask them to go back over the period of time.
The only thing I would talk to is last Tuesday's ad hoc committee meeting.
And there's there's still
stuff
kind of,
from that we haven't discussed in public.
Yeah. And then what I'm thinking, part of this is like when we got the contract from Aviatrix to do communications, and Rick and I looked at it and said, sure, why not? But we had it passed. We had Kevin talk to David, and David talked to Kevin, and then Kevin couldn't come back to us.
Yeah.
To say, yeah, this is how it got.
Nor did I share with David what Rick and Mary said, because they didn't say anything about it. They said, show this to David. Whatever David says, put it out there.
Right.
So there was no Brown Act issues there. We were very careful with that.
Because communication, and then another question comes up is, having a technical committee and then a communications committee, because communications is a big part of telling the story to the public. Is it's because having gone through this the last time, there was this great fear. Oh, the third runway, you're trying to grow the airport. And that was not the concept. But if we don't tell the story to where people can understand it, and that's not my strength. And I know it's not my strength. And so I'm just trying to find a workaround to, if I have to, and part of that is, let's say I couldn't serve on it anymore, then what would happen? I'm trying, Brent, to help us figure out a way.
You can talk to me anytime by saying hi.
When Mary and Rick, whatever you discussed on Tuesday, when will that become public?
Well, we could.
Well, I think there's still, yeah, we're trying to put our arms around
really
it.
That we talked about. They're not. I don't think they're. We can report on those.
Because I'm wondering if you do that, and then Brent, you can say, does that serve that concept of bringing everybody up to date and everything is public, and then we could switch it. Otherwise, if it can't be discussed today, then maybe just we could say that I'll take over when that could be discussed, and between now and then, stop having private meetings with the two of you.
Yeah, the one thing is the next time we could talk about it, which would be in April, we'll have already had two more communication meetings, the 13th and the 20th.
Well, but we're meeting, but he could be meeting with Mead and Hunt separate to find out stuff, and he could, and the next Mead and Hunt meeting is
2 weeks.
First, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. It's the 13th.
Yeah, I think there's just two topics that we talked about on Tuesday that I think are within the purview of your report. If you want to talk about them, I think if you did that.
The next Hunt meeting is on the 5th of April.
Oh, okay.
And then on the 19th, and then the ACT meeting's on the 13th.
Yeah, this is a perfect time to give a report as to what happened. It then becomes public record, so that then takes care of the Brown Act question. Once again, as long as everything's covered. If one of you think of something, down the road, then bring that up at the next agendized matter, board meeting with it on the agenda.
Okay. Well, I'm good with it. If we can do that, if everybody is on board with that, that works for me.
So, okay, well, the new news is they did, as doing the analysis, they discovered there's a threshold of 500 aircraft of a certain type means that you are now having to reclassify the airport, or at least the runway.
The runway, yeah.
And 1129, because we have had 1,400 aircraft who have an approach speed greater than the B2 classification that is currently on that runway, it would now have to be reclassified as a C2 air runway. And what that does is it does not change the runway length, it doesn't change the runway width, but it changes the runway protection zone and the runway safety area. And Kevin could provide you those details. And what it would mean is at some point in the future, to meet future standards, you would have to move the taxiway closer to the buildings, to the terminal.
The one we just rebuilt.
But it would be on them to help fund it, and it might not happen for 5, 10, 15 years. It would just be a non-standard. So that was probably the significance related to that.
Yeah, that was what most of the meeting was about right there. Kind of going through and looking at that.
We currently have almost 1,500 of those type of aircrafts. And so what would happen is it would go to the FAA and they would then say, you would have to reclassify your 1129, and we also would be showing 1634 on it. And if they wouldn't accept 1634, then we would say, well, we'll live with the ALP as we have it, which is classifying it as a B2, which it doesn't change anything to do with the runway. It just changes and it doesn't change the trapezoids of arrivals and departures.
It expands safety areas. Yes.
Yeah.
Everything it does.
And, this past year, the staff has been moving boulders, and expanding it just because our staff is very safety conscious and has been doing it on their own. But it's something to be aware of, and it's something to consider. So that was probably what we spent most of Tuesday talking about.
Yeah.
And trying to figure out what that repercussion would be.
The two other items we talked about real quick I could add is just talking a little bit about pilot outreach. So when we say pilot outreach, Brad Buzinski with Mead & Hunt and his team that's working this, part of the process of figuring out how to noise model the 1634 is they have to get pilot data. So they've been talking to local pilots, and we gave them a list and talked about different folks that are being contacted. And then they're also doing that right now with transient operators. We were working on that with Brad today, of getting the transient operator, the top, like Wheels Up, NetJets, RSF, all the big ones that are doing that. And then Brad talked a little about noise modeling and data, and trying to get data from Vector so that they can keep moving forward with building the data sets they need to model some of these things. That's what we've been talking about.
That's pretty much it. Otherwise,
yeah, it's all public. So what does everybody think?
I think Mary's right. She knows herself better than anyone, and you are the master communicator.
Thank you.
Because I think people will freak out about this, and all it means is an approach speed, but they're already here.
Yeah, it just increases safety areas.
Yes.
Kat, Rick, what do you think?
I agree. I think you are the right person to be on the communication team. I admire Mary for stepping away and saying somebody else can do it better. That's hard to do. I'm fine with that.
If you decide to do that, I just want to compliment Mary on, she put a lot of hard work into where we've gotten so far, and
sure,
her attention to detail has really helped us move this thing along. So she's done some great work.
Thank you.
Rick?
Agreed.
All right, and what do we other than what we just did? Do we have to do something else to make this official?
No, I mean, just be careful if you want to ask for public comment and then take a vote to formally recognize the change.
Okay.
And I would suggest at some point to Kevin and David and Rick that there might be worthwhile to have an interspersed meeting to totally bring him up to speed. Or he can just meet with Brad.
Well, I know that, I don't, David, I think you watched the ACT meeting on last week, and that had a lot of everything we've been doing and talking about, but we can get together and
with Brad.
Yeah, with Brad.
Yeah. Great.
So, but
Thank you all.
As far as the next ACT meeting, then David and I couldn't be at that because now he's on an ad hoc.
Oh.
Good point.
Good point.
Yeah.
So I could.
So you
because
could.
I'm not on this ad hoc anymore. So
you
Can I
have David and Rick do the next one.
That's what I would ask. If Rick and I can do that, because I didn't get to do the last one, and I feel like it
makes the most sense.
That's what I think.
It does, yeah.
So we'll have David and Rick for April 13th, and then May 11th we're going to be diving into. We'll just skip ahead to that real quick if that's okay. On ACT, we're going to be talking about summer traffic operations. We did the same thing we did last year in May, and Mary, if you'd want to attend that would be a good one. We're going to try and really get noise affected neighbors into that meeting and talk about what we're thinking and expecting for 2022 and the programs that we have. And we'll also update on the master plan a little bit, talk about that, but making sure we don't, it'll be what we've reported in the board meeting in April.
I could probably do it. I don't have my calendar. I'm a paper person. And just as an aside, if there are questions that are technical, you can defer to Kevin, who then asks me, like we did with communications. Maybe not. I don't know. Kevin can talk to me about technical.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so as far as changing up this ad hoc composition, is there any public comment? And then, Brent, do we need a formal motion to form the new committee?
I'm sorry, I don't recall how you've been doing the committees before. Is it just two people volunteering to do it, or in the back?
More by consensus, I think.
Yeah. Right. So that'll be fine. And
Okay.
I will have a comment, Mary, about if you talk to Kevin about technical questions, you have to be concerned that that's not a spoken hub serial meeting that he then goes to the ad hoc committee and says, oh, here's what Mary's input is.
But if he just has information, if I put thoughts to his head, that he's just presenting it as his own, as things to think about.
Yeah, I mean, then Kevin, you have to be careful about not presenting that to the subcommittee.
Yeah.
Because then there's 3 board members.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would assume we all know how to do that.
Yeah.
At this point.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, David. Thank you, Rick.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Mary.
And thank you, David, for taking over the communications.
My pleasure.
I'm eager to see your $5,000 website, by the way.
What's that?
I'm eager to see your $5,000 website.
I actually had as long as we're on this topic, I was going to leak at the end. I thought that ACT meeting was outstanding. I thought that was the best that we've done. It was such a great example of the point of that program, to see those conversations happen. I mean, the coffee talk too, but it's just collectively, I love seeing this open connection between board staff and the public. I think it's really, really good.
Well, and I think thank you for that. And I think and I appreciate everybody that helped with that. The Zoom format, some people always meet in person, but I don't know that we would have had all those people in person. That Zoom format really let people come and go and come in, and we had 35 people there, a lot of pilots, but also some community members, and just had really good dialogue and just were able to talk. So.
Right. Okay, the Climate Transformation Alliance, we had a governance workshop last week, and things are moving along. We sort of hammered out some of the ways that the founding members were being able to control the group moving forward. And we have our next meeting, we will be prioritizing the stakeholders. So Kevin, you and I are going to have to work on that together, I think.
Okay. I saw the email on that today.
Yeah. So it's moving along. It's, we're still in the planning stage, but it's gathering steam.
Perfect. Thank you.
Did we already talk about ACT attendance?
Yeah, so I have Rick and David on 13th of April, and then I've very tentative for May 11th, but there's room for one more for May 11th.
Oh, I'll do that.
Okay.
I will not do that. I'll be in Ireland.
Ooh.
All right. Okay, good. That one's done.
Awesome.
I want to be Rick in my next life.
Yeah.
I want to be Rick in this life.
Okay.
General manager's report.
Okay, perfect. So the GM report, some good conferences coming up. I always made a list. I've added to the UC Davis Noise Symposium. I sent out a email on that to everybody. That's coming up in May. If you haven't been to that, that's a really good one. The FAA with AAAE also does a noise conference, but I couldn't find the date for that one. But the UC Davis Noise Symposium is in UC Davis. It's closer. So if you're interested in that, we have that there. No need to talk about ACT. We went through that already.
But just on these conferences.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
I pulled it up. It's, how the program topics, how airports can work with their communities on noise abatement procedures, climate change and aviation, pathways to net zero, which might be something in your bailiwick, Kat. What is meaningful community engagement? Health effects of noise from local to national. 3 perspectives on research, legislation, implementation, noise metrics and impacts, thinking beyond DNL, and new entrants in technology. And I have gone to these in the past. I'm thinking about this one, but with the climate aspect, I thought Kat might be particularly interested in it. So I just putting it out there. It's usually a really good conference. And I'll let you know, Kevin, soon if I'm going to go, because I haven't been in a lot of time. And they also do have it available for community members for like $300, as compared to, I think for government agencies, it would be $800. But if community members are interested, and there are usually groups, in fact, I know there's groups at this who have gotten together with their communities to address some of these issues. It's a good brainstorming place to go and meet other people, and how do you develop something like that. So I would almost say if there's people who are interested, please consider going.
Perfect. Thank you, Mary. You all should have an email with all the information on that you can look at. Let us know if you want us to register you for that. We can do that. And I think for conferences, more than 2 board members can go to those. Brent, is that right? That's.
Yeah, they can all go to it as long as they don't discuss amongst themselves matters pertaining to the district. So all 5 of you can go. You just can't say, that was a great idea. What do you think we should do about this?
Well, 2 of you can. 2 of you can.
Yeah.
And another 2 can. But, it's close, and it's actually has been a valuable conference in the past.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah, I've been a couple of times. I like it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, because ACAP members often went to it. Yeah.
I've been a couple of times, and yeah. Perfect. We've already talked about the workshop. Any other ideas on that? I'll get a doodle out, and we'll get Shauna is going to put that together. I've already provided her our guiding principles, and so she's already kind of starting to think about it. But I feel like having a facilitator there is we'll get a lot more done. Is my opinion. If everyone's in agreement, I'm looking around. Everyone seems to be good with that. She's excellent at that. Okay, I also wanted just to let you know we had at one time hoped to get the landing fee, an overnight fee and ramp fee on this agenda, but there's a lot to it as we started diving into it, particularly working with Vector and how we might bill that. And so we're working on that. We plan on bringing that back to you in April. I did put in here this little chart that Mary had prepared, and we're looking at that the B and D, and we'll try and give you a model of what that would look like, a landing fee that would recover those costs. And as I've done some preliminary numbers, it's not that difficult to do, and this would be recovering the airside costs.
Yeah.
The FBO is already in cost recovery. Probably wanted to generate more money, but it already recovers just about all of its costs. But then the air side is what we can recover from a landing fee. And then we also may even put in there an ATC fee. And these would be for primarily transient operators. As you can see from my proposal, I'm not suggesting a fee like this be applied to tenants or folks that are already taxpayers in the district.
Kevin, what tab are you on?
I'm on
the agenda.
GM report item 4.
Tab number. Just GM report tab 16.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so that's what that one is. And then I appreciate everyone coming out. I know Teresa, you were gone for a lot of the time that we were doing tours, but inviting everybody out to spend some time with the O&M department. I think Hardy's even talking about doing something similar for his department. And we did go out and show you different parts of the facilities. And one of the things we looked at were hangars. And so we have a lot of information that's going to be coming forward to you to talk about hangar use storage. And this isn't a dig or an attack on our pilot community. I want everybody to know that's not what this is about. We're actually trying to be in compliance with the FAA hangar storage use policy, which is pretty new. And so we're going to be working on that. We do have some hangars that have some storage issues that we're going to be looking at, and also getting clear standards so everybody knows, what is, how we are as an airport complying with that policy and what the rules are. And it's not just us doing this. This is a common topic among our general aviation airport manager groups that we have. Every airport everywhere, no matter where you go, in the United States has non-aeronautical storage items in hangars. I'll guarantee you. We're talking to every airport manager. So we all work through this as to where's the line, because the FAA says anything that can go in a storage unit should go in a storage unit. But at the same time, the airport manager can decide what's appropriate for non-aeronautical storage in a hangar. And our airports never really had a strong standard on that. So there are some safety issues we're getting ready to address. And that's what we wanted to show some of you, some of those things that were out there. So as we start to work on those, and if you get calls, you're familiar with what you're looking at. And then we will be working on a storage use policy that we hope to bring you in May, May or June, right in that time frame that will make it much clearer. But I wanted to just get that out there, let all the folks that know that we're working on that. Any questions on that one?
I have a thought on that one, because I've got ever since I joined ACAT, I've been getting thoughts about hangar stuff. And I would like to propose an ad hoc with myself and Rick again, and widen the scope of this to just be a hangar policy update, to be able to look at multiple things on the hangar thing, including the storage thing, because I think we've got some opportunities for some other ideas that might help our situation. And I think I should be on it because I am a hangar tenant. So whatever is decided will specifically affect me. I think Rick should be on it because I drive him crazy and I look for every opportunity to do so. But
I think it's a bit of a
is that a
conflict
motion?
as a
I
hangar
second
tenant.
that motion.
No. I object.
I'm not trying to protect Rick. and I'd want to think it through, but I would have some concerns. As you mentioned, you are a hangar tenant and it affects you, and therefore there could be some FPPC conflicts of interest. And if you want that pursued further, I'm sure Josh would be happy to look into it for everybody. But I'd be hesitant to do that right now.
So just so you know, I did speak to Josh about not this specific thing, but a similar thing, and he said that you will have to recuse yourself from any vote that is about finances that might affect you, but that you would not have to recuse yourself from anything that was not about finances.
Yes.
So if like, for example, if we looked at this and decided to adjust hangar rates, that I can't participate in that vote because I'm a hangar tenant. But as far as
I don't anticipate this discussion to be about rates.
No, I would agree with that.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's just like an ideas kind of a thing. We can definitely clear that with Josh.
Well, I don't like it. You're a hangar tenant. I don't think you should be on it. I think the idea of the ad hoc is good, but I really don't think you should be on it as a hangar tenant in any way, shape, or form. Just because you don't have a barbecue in yours, someone else might want a barbecue in theirs, and you have an opinion.
But that's why I said that I wanted to widen the scope of it, because I've got ideas about doing more with the hangars to accommodate more aircraft, and I don't know if any of the rest of you have ideas about that. And I would hate to put an ad hoc together if people don't have specific ideas to look into.
I think that he brings something to the table as long as he's not talking about rates. I think that his familiarity with the different type of aircraft and usage on these hangars has a lot of value.
Wholeheartedly agree with his value. No question. But the ethics of it are questionable because we've all seen what's in the hangars. Some of them are hoarders. And David could have his own agenda. I don't know, Brent, you weigh in on that.
And if Josh has no problem.
Yeah, as long as it's not finances. That was what my concern was. Whether you store your barbecue or something like that in it, I don't think would have a material financial impact. Material impact on your finances. So as long as there's no discussion on rates.
So Brown Act and ethics is only about money?
No, this is the FPPC conflict of interest from a financial, if there's a financial impact, a material financial impact. And so that's why rates are certainly excluded. But if it's just on, storage policies, that is certainly a lot less likely to have a material financial impact.
Let me throw another concept out here. If this board was 4 or 5 pilots, it wouldn't be able to do anything. Right? Because if it wouldn't talk about fuel rates, it wouldn't talk about services, it couldn't talk about hangars, it couldn't talk about anything.
They'd have to be hangar tenants.
No, there's
not just pilots.
There is the rule of necessity that if it impacts everybody, then you randomly draw the minimum number to get a quorum to make that decision, which we had to do years ago discussing health insurance reimbursement, because obviously it impacted all 5 board members.
Right. Okay, so then alternatively, here's what I would propose. If we are not comfortable with this idea, then I would like staff to stop working on this, and I will bring a proposal next month for a bunch of hangar policy ideas and just bring it to the board, and then you can decide if you want to just see those policies and if you want to put together an ad hoc for somebody else to do that or to do something differently.
Why don't you just give your proposals to staff? I'm not interested in putting policy in place that staff hasn't vetted and approved.
Well, it's not policy, it's ideas. And the ideas, I think, like when we discussed ACT and we discussed the pilot group and we discussed these different things, they came from originally from early board decisions or discussions. So that's why I feel like to bring them up and to have some board discussion about it, I think is valuable. But it's up to the four of you.
I'm always grateful, as I've just jumped off of an ad hoc committee, of the value that happens in discussions and meetings. And if he's willing to do it, and Kat's been on ad hocs, we've all had turns on ad hoc committees. That's a lot of time and effort, and it's a lot of thought process, and it isn't always something that it does well in you're job owning in a meeting. At a board meeting, it's very difficult to think and discuss. And so anybody who's willing to serve at that level, I say kudos. And if Rick's willing to do it along with David, I'm all for it, because they're putting in the time, they're putting in the energy, and they're putting in the thought process along with staff. And you can get a lot more done there than in a board meeting.
Okay, here's my 2 cents. I agree David would be great, and I totally agree with everything you just said, Mary. I'm just concerned about us crossing lines that could later bite us in the butt. I totally agree with you, and those who are willing to volunteer should volunteer, and I'm grateful. And David has knowledge that none of us have because he's a pilot. I totally agree with all of that. I just want to make sure it doesn't get overturned later. We don't get accused of something because we had this pilot who has a hangar. It's not a pilot, just has a hangar, making decisions about what can be in there, long term or short term or whatever. If Brent has always been way more liberal than Josh. So if Josh is blessing you, go for it. I just wanted to voice it. I just want us all to think about it.
And when I took the tour, I inspected his hangar. It was really almost clean. A car and a plane.
Still not. None of that's my point. I have no judgment on what comes out of it. And I super appreciate David volunteering and everything you said, Mary. It's only, he has one. So how is that fair?
Okay. So
again, if Josh approves it, great. Go for it. Do it.
Are you willing to be on it, Rick or Kat?
Yeah, ultimately, I understand what Teresa's saying, but I also think, they are going to come back to the full board with suggestions. So I think we're, at the end of the day, the 5 of us are the ones making the decisions.
And maybe at that point, if there's crossover, David can back out of that. He can abstain.
Yeah. And maybe this is one that we ask Josh to keep a closer eye on, because we do have some concerns. And
I can be forthcoming with you that I do have an agenda, and my agenda is to get as many airplanes into existing structures as we can possibly and legally do and safely do. That is my agenda, and that's all the ideas I've got are all about that. So it's not really about, to me, whether a barbecue can be in a hangar. To me, this is
Trust me, I am not questioning your motives or your character. I'm only questioning when we come out with a policy and we tell a hangar tenant they can't put something in there because David Diamond said so, that they say, well, he doesn't get to vote because he's a hangar tenent.
Yeah, but like Kat said, it wouldn't be David saying it, would it be everybody saying it?
Correct.
And I do feel like, and Josh has schooled me on this in the past, it is the discussion process is often disconnected from the voting process. So there are things you could discuss and you can participate in, but then ultimately we decide you can't vote on this, depending on the thing. And I would accept that if we got to a point where we felt like it was not a good idea for me to vote on something. By the time we have a policy recommendation, the 5 of us have looked at it, staff has looked at it, it's no longer about David.
Okay, I'm good.
Well, thank you.
Who's
in it?
An ad hoc committee with David and Rick to work on hangar use and airplane storage and I'll find a better title, but
Standards too.
standards. Yeah, hangar use
I
standards.
mean, there's some dangerous stuff going on in these hangars.
Yeah, no, that we're yeah, those are things we're working on as we speak.
Okay. All right. Are you done
Great,
with
thank
the
you.
GM report, Kevin?
That was it.
Okay. Do we have any public comment about the GM report? No. Okay. ACT meeting summary. Do you want to go over that, or we've all read it?
I think it speaks for itself. I think you.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we're good on ACT. I've got attendees for the next meetings, and then there's the recording. I really appreciate Emily, who did it in the past, and Lisa, who's now putting together our ACT meeting summary report. She did a really good job.
Yeah, she did do a good job. Yeah.
Thank you, Lisa.
Okay. Number 16, Operations and Maintenance Department report. Does anybody have any questions for Dave? Dave, you have anything you want to share with us?
Well, I've got nothing else, proper, but I would like to answer any questions that anybody might have.
I just have on there, congratulations to Ryan Wyden.
Yeah.
His promotion.
Ditto on that.
Yeah.
I had some things on item 2, the breakouts of the February FBO activity.
Okay.
There was this concern, with the Jet A, I would like to see the broken out in terms of how many of those gallons are local and how many are other, if that's possible.
Yeah, we're working on that, and Kelly and I are working on that in the finance report. We'll include that in the finance report. We're right now in the process of working with AvFuel and the AvFuel hub. She's been working really hard on it, so that we can break out those gallons in the contract fueling, which wasn't quite as easy as we thought, but she's working hard on that.
Thanks. Okay. And then, just because I have lived the cost allocation, that what it comes back, when I come back to it, I go, okay, the GPU plus LAV plus water plus ice adds up, and we were $474,000 in the hole on that. And divide it by 12, but most of that activity happens in the summer. I get it. That's $39,500 per month lose. And between the GPU and potable water, we made $5,540. So I just want that. This doesn't have tug in here, so that probably also brought some money in. But that delta between almost $40,000 and $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 is a big delta. And I know since I crunch it, I have to point these things out for the other board members, because I don't think other board members necessarily do. I also noticed that between January and February, there was this concern that we would sell less Jet A because of the bump in pricing, but I'm not seeing that. In fact, we sold more in February. And then the only other thing is that I appreciated you're putting down 111 hours dedicated to fueling aircraft, and just ran those numbers to say, okay, that works to 11 minutes per fueling event, and it works out to 62 hours based on those fueling events. But when I go into the, by the cost allocation, that would be 62 hours, but by actual time, he's got 111 hours. So what that means is that the cost allocation was actually too conservative. Does that make sense? What I'm, it's like, yeah. So, if by fueling events, it was like 11 minutes per fueling event, it was 10.6 for low lead and 11.4 for Jet A. And that works out to 0.183 hours per fueling event. There were 337 fueling events. That works out to 62 hours based on the data that Dave is collecting. But by actual time, it's 111 hours. So that's almost twice as much as what was anticipated through the cost allocation. So I'm just bringing that to your attention, Kevin, and to staff, that it takes more time than we anticipated in the cost allocation.
Yeah, so a couple things on that. I don't want to belabor the point, but and I'm happy to look at those numbers that you have there, Mary. I'd want to see what you have, that you're using. But remember, in the other products and services in the FBO, it has a lot more labor in there than just on servicing GPUs, labs, and all those things. Those are the revenue centers in other products and services. But the reason the labor costs are so high in the allocation study, because I went through this and looked at it because it didn't make sense to me. But as I looked at it, I realized that when we were collecting that and putting it in, and I think it's still an accurate number, but it also includes our person that sits in dispatch and runs the point of sale and the marshaling of aircraft and all the other things that we do within the FBO were captured in other products and services. So there's labor in there beyond just providing labor for those revenue centers. The other thing to remember is the FBO is self-sustaining. We're not subsidizing the FBO. It shows a subsidy because we moved TU revenue out to handle the TU. But when you put that back, we are not subsidizing jets that are coming and going per the allocation study through the FBO. We need to make more money from the FBO. I agree with that. But the FBO is self-sustaining, and the revenue that we're receiving is recovering those costs. And I'm hoping the landing fee will then address that airside cost center. But that, I just wanted to share that because there's a lot of other labor in other products and services besides what we use to run a GPU out to a jet.
Okay, I have to think on that because it seemed like other products and services, I don't recall it that way, and I'd have to pull out the cost allocation to look at it. But yeah.
Well, that's how we did it when we were allocating staffing. Because I went through it back and we kind of talked about why all these numbers were in here. And fueling was pretty easy. Real estate was pretty easy. Everything else went into other products and services. And then the revenues that were in there were just those other services. But even if we moved them out, that cost is still there. So it's still something we need to recover.
Right.
It's just that I don't want to say that because I think the GPUs is incredibly profitable. But when you add that all in there, the GPUs don't generate enough money to recover the person that's in dispatch.
Right.
We're going to talk about this in the workshop. This is one of those workshop topics.
Okay. I'm just, me and crunching numbers.
I appreciate you doing that and bringing that up.
Okay.
Any other questions for Dave?
I want to thank you for touring us around and again, congratulations to Ryan.
My pleasure to take you folks around, and we're looking forward to a long career with Mr. Wyden on staff.
Thanks, Dave.
Great. Thank you, Dave.
You're welcome.
Is there any public comments on the operations and maintenance? No. Okay, moving on to Kelly, the financial services.
Just wanted to throw out a couple of highlights from February. Those higher prices for jet fuel have not seemed to deter anyone. We're seeing some good sales there, and our overall revenue is $120,000 over budget and $240,000 ahead of last year. Overall, everything is looking great. We are hard at work on the audit. We're about 85% done with what we need to get done. Every day I've got my hand on the mouse waiting for the auditors to ask me for more things so that I can get it back to them and get it done. And things are looking great on that front. Just trying to get everything finished so that we can have a report for you at the April meeting is the goal.
Great.
Anybody have any questions?
I do on
me.
Oh,
again, I love to crunch numbers, and I know you all love that I love to crunch numbers. And in this place where, Kevin, you just said you're going to start thinking to break out the Jet A local and not
as we're working that program.
Retail. So somehow that will be captured in the COGS.
Yeah, and maybe Kelly may be able to update better on that. But as we launched into the contract fueling, there were some issues with the hub and how the hub was able to track that on the back end for our reporting. and it didn't work like we'd hoped. But Kelly's been working really hard on finding a solution to that. But once we figure that and finite that, then we'll be able to report that. Did I get that right, Kelly?
Yeah. I'll make a notation, probably not within the table, but maybe below it in the cost of goods section to let you know. Currently, the only way we have to handle it is we're comparing tail numbers every Friday with what Fuel is showing and what we're showing. What I'm trying to do is create a new product so that I can report on it easier, so that we keep the hub our system of record, so that we've got historical data. We're not messing with anything manually outside the system. I like to keep it coming from the system where it's plugged into in the first place, just to keep that data integrity. And so we are so close. I came up with a new plan yesterday, and I've been doing some testing in the system, and I think we're nearly there to come up with a better way for it to just come out the way regular contract fuel does now, but just with the local designation. It'll be a lot easier.
So we would know the difference. Great.
Yep.
Thanks. And this is, me with talking net revenue, which, that just subtracts COGS from net revenue, and it doesn't really address expenses. And again, I'm just always trying to think about that because, revenue's nice, but what's profit? What is, how do we address expenses? And I looked at the cost allocation as operating expenses, annualized capital cost, and allocated airside and landside cost. And it was about 2.5, net revenue divided by those three it's about 2.5 across the board, which then affects what you're really making. And I'm just asking the other board members, asking Kelly to sort of be trying to think how we address what we're actually making on fuel. Revenue is nice, but unless you know profit, you really don't know where you are.
Well, this P&L that you're looking at is never going to match up to the allocation study. Those are apples and oranges kind of situation. Right. This is here's what our jet fuel revenue is. Here's what our cost of goods is. Here's your gross profit.
That's growth. That's net profit. That's net revenue. But unless you take into account things like the equipment to deliver the fuel, the personnel to deliver the fuel, and the airside and lands, the fuel farm costs, then revenue is not, it's not profit, it's revenue. And I don't know how, but if you just subtract COGS, all you have is net revenue, not profit on what that fuel is earning for you.
That's never going to show up on these reports. That would have to be some completely separate analysis.
So I got a question, and I have to put my usual disclaimer on this, Kelly, because you know how I'm useless with a calculator, let alone any more significant mathematic constructs. Could one thing that we could extract from the allocation study is that we get that number on what it costs us, like for example, per gallon on avgas to pump or per gallon on jet fuel to pump. Could we use that as just kind of a number that would be added in as another column here to show that what Mary's asking for, or would that not be legit?
Well, the allocation study was really based on 18, 19, and 20, right? So it's never going to really match up to what's happening in the here and now. But to get like a true number, here's how much jet fuel we pumped, but then here's every minute of every person's time who did that, plus all their benefits, plus that's just the human time. And then here's the fuel farm R&M for, we got a new hose, or things of that nature, any kind of parts that were replaced, R&M, things like that. Like, you have to take all of those things into account to get that bottom line number, and we don't have that level of breakdown, not currently, to come up with that.
I think my thought was
maybe I'm offering that I sort of came up with a way to ballpark it, and it would be, it's a ballpark. And I would like to meet with Kevin and Kelly to say, here's a way that I came up with a ballpark. To kind of really have a, it's like net revenue on jet fuel is 228, but it's really like 137. And yeah.
Editorially, because that's kind of where the space I'm in today. At the end of the day, we just approved $600,000 to be given away. We are making money. And everything that happens on the airfield and elsewhere is contributing to that. And I'm such a big picture thinker that I don't need to grind in to find us this. So I guess my request would be, if you want to know that number, just because you're curious, maybe meet with these guys offline.
That's what I'm suggesting. Because, the idea that we're making money is because we get $7 million in property tax.
And how many millions in FAA income tax? Sorry, I'm super pained by taxes today.
Understand. So Kevin and Kelly, I would like to meet with you at some point to show you the process I came up with.
Yeah, we're happy to look at that, Mary. I think, and I don't think you're asking for this, but before we go in and readjust, we're not going to be adjusting the accounting system or the monthly reporting.
No. I'm not asking for that.
Yeah, I got that, but we're happy to meet with any board member and go over your questions and ideas. So that's not a problem.
Because, so I'm, as the board, I'm trying to get a sense of what is our profit on each gallon of fuel, not what the revenue is.
Why doesn't that, so you're saying, because I know the allocation study gives us that, but it's 2018, 19, and 20. You're trying to figure out, if I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but you want to know is it a monthly, quarterly, annual basis, how much we're making on fuel, or?
Right.
Yeah.
May I ask a question of you, Mary?
Sure.
To what end? Like, what would be the point of this information? What decision would we make using this knowledge?
Okay, so we at the budget said, okay, let's charge $275 on jet fuel, right?
Margin.
Margin. And then we're giving discounts. And what proportion of people are taking that discount? The 20 locals. Are we still making money on them? Are we making money on, can we make more money on the transient jet users? And there's that line where it's supply and demand. At a certain point, if it gets too expensive, then they won't buy fuel. But obviously, they're still buying fuel. And if we can push that 275 to 3 on those travelers, I think that's a good thing for the airport.
I wouldn't disagree with that. It's like when I gas my boat on the lake, it's like $15 a gallon right now.
Yeah.
Sick and wrong, but it is what it is.
And that's why
we're happy to meet on that.
Okay. I'm setting it aside to talk with you next week. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else have questions for Kelly?
I have an easy question that every month I wonder this, Kelly, and every month I don't ask about it. Why is the hangar wait list in your report and not like on AVCOM?
Good question. It's just always been there.
Why? But what? I mean,
I think at one time, I think at one time,
that's a terrible answer.
Was the one that maintained it.
Can't believe you just said that. That's so terrible.
What did I say?
Because it's always been there.
No, I then I answered it. I said I said that MC was the one that used to maintain that, if I remember right, and that goes back a number of years. But we could definitely look at that. But MC worked in finance a long time ago.
And I'll tell you the reason I think it, because and this happens occasionally, because like it's happening to me right now this month, is I think of a question to ask about that, but then Kelly's not going to know that it's a Jill thing. It's like the question I've got here is like, do we know a breakdown of how many aircraft are homeless right now that need hangars, like as opposed to people who are on there who are going to buy something when their time comes up or something, and I'm thinking like, it's like, I'm not going to ask Kelly this. It's like, I know, Kelly, this is not your thing. It's like, this is a, you know, that's why I started thinking, like, why is this in finance? But
well, maybe not. And I go ahead, Kelly.
Yeah, those questions I would have to defer to AFCOM.
Yeah, we could definitely look at that. I know that, just remember, the finance and AVCOM, particularly Jill, work very close hand in hand, because a lot of the hangar, like billing and all that, goes through finance. But let us look at that. Well, because that might be something more appropriate for Jill and Hardy's department. But in past years, and Hardy, am I accurate in that? I think MC used to maintain that, and she worked in that department.
Yeah,
we didn't even report it for many years.
Yeah,
it wasn't reported. It only came into reality being reported maybe in maybe 12, 13. Before then, it was no report like that.
Yeah.
Okay. Not a big deal. I was just always curious about.
Yeah, and Jill, just to answer your question, Director Diamond, Jill has a lot of high fidelity information inside that list. And so it's a spreadsheet, but it's got all this other subjective information that she carries and keeps. And so I think to answer your question, yeah, there's a lot of, call it like metadata to the list that will give you an idea of what it really means.
Awesome. I have a feeling that Rick and I are going to have lots of questions for Jill and share some ideas and stuff.
Sure, he's got lots of answers. It's very sharp.
Good.
Super. Thank you.
All right. Is there any public comments on the financials? Don't see any. What's next?
AVCOM, tab 19.
Oh, AVCOM. Yep. Hardy.
Okay. So we have kind of a curtailed report, the ops and comments report. We're gonna hit that last, and then flight procedures update. The website RFP was actually handled as a consent item, so you approve that by consent. And then the lease term update. I'm going to start with the flight procedures update. We're not making a lot of movement on our flight procedures work right now, because Flight Tech Engineering, which is a two-man operation, Alec and Richard, are both heavily and deeply involved in the 1634 analysis. And so that's really where their priority and our priority as an airport is. So I think when they get close to wrapping up the technical details of that project, I can have a better understanding of how much we're delayed. But I'm really looking for them to give me a date on flight validation, when they can bring their tools and their instrumentation out, put it in an aircraft, and get flight validation started. That was originally scheduled for March. It was then scheduled for April, and now April's out, so we're looking at May. So that's what I have for you right now. I can probably get you an additional detail on the actual delay in April. So that's flight procedures. And then moving on to the lease update, I think what Jules was commenting on from Skydive Truckee Tahoe is the fact that we had a conversation related to her lease term sheet after the time of publication on this staff report. So we did meet with her, and we talked with her, and she had some issues that she wanted to bring up related to the way that their leasehold was categorized. And we've since reached out to AMCG, and we're working through getting a full opinion from Jeff Coleman on categorization of their leasehold, and also some other details related to the appraisal. So under public comment, if Jules wants to speak on that, I'm happy to answer any questions on that. We got Sierra Aero totally completed. We also met with Truckee Tahoe Soaring Association, and I wanted to thank Director Stevens, who called into that call to help us work through some of the details related to that leasehold. And since that time, staff, myself and Jill, have had 2 additional meetings to answer questions that Truckee Tahoe Soaring Association had regarding their lease terms and the provisions of what the airport was asking for out of that lease. And then finally, we'll wrap up with noteworthy. David Vanquist was promoted to Aviation Community Coordinator. So that's a combination position, taking elements from Mark Covey's pilot and passenger outreach position and kind of putting it together, rolling it into one job. We think there's some efficiencies that we're going to be gained there, because David, he looks at the flight tracks and he listens to the radio, and then he also can see the flight crew, the tail number. And with a little bit of coaching and training, we can get him to put those elements together pretty well. The other thing I will note is that David has been one of the people in our organization who has worked really hard to learn new skills, learn new trades, take tests. He actually has a financial certification through AAAE. He also got his private pilot's license. And he's really one of those people that goes out and searches out knowledge to support his acumen in airport management. And so I'd like to commend him and just thank him for his hard work. And I'm really looking forward to working with him in this new position. So that's what I have for you tonight. Any questions and public comment? I think we may have a little bit there too.
Well, I super easy for me. David Van Quest is a rock star. I'm so proud of him for what he's done since he's become an employee at this airport. Is just unbelievable to me. I've managed a lot of people in my life, and I know when you've got that good employee, he's really, really good. And I'm so happy to see him do this. And David, I just want to let you know that I had a meeting with a pilot the other day, and the pilot brought up the emergency landing guide and talked about how excellent a resource this was, and that we should be doing much more to promote this and to tell people about this. And it was my pleasure to tell him about how you virtually made that happen on your own while Kat and I were back on ACAT. So yeah, super congratulations on that stuff.
Here. Thanks, David. Thanks, Artie.
You bet. Thank you.
Yeah, I also want to say congratulations, and you're a heck of a ping pong player.
Not as good as you, but man can dream.
Any other questions for Hardy?
No, if I could just make one more just note on this, which is just not as happy a topic as David's promotion. Our ops per comment ratio, it looks good because the number's down, but that's actually a bad thing. And so I'm just I did this on the website the other day, and I just want to do this again. I'm just appealing to my fellow pilots. Please make sure that we are doing everything we can do to reduce our impact on this community. We have a trend, a multi-year trend that is showing things going the wrong way. We also see an increase in traffic. If we look back, that we can extrapolate, will probably continue on. And I know that there is some concern with pilots about some of the ideas this board has for accommodating the growth here and the reduction of impact. And I'm just saying to my fellow pilots, it starts with us, and we can start this. We can affect change on this immediately. So please, we're looking at this stuff, please take it seriously. It really makes a big difference.
Thanks, David. Any other board members?
No.
Okay, how about public comment? Jules, go ahead.
Hi, yeah, Hardy, can you guys hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Hardy kind of clarified it somewhat with his updated statement right now, but what we just wanted to bring attention to was that AvCom department report in line item 4, because it was really just stating that we had acknowledged receipt of the term sheet. It said that we had complaints regarding its timing, and that staff is coordinating with the FAA on this issue, and the airport compliance program manager for the FAA has referred this to the airport district office for further consideration. And we just felt like that in itself as a statement really overlooks the most important issue, certainly for us, that we found with the lease term sheet. And we just wanted to make sure that that was clarified, certainly for the board and anybody else who's interested. And the big issue for us is that we have noted that we have been misclassified for the purpose of this rate assessment. And so what we're asking for is basically to find a more fitting classification for our leasehold. If you go by the definition of improved land, which is what we've been assessed at, which is listed on the rent study by AMCG, they assessed our rate, they assessed our land, and we're not leasing improved land. By definition, on that study, it clearly states that improved aeronautical land includes utilities to the boundary. We don't have water, we don't have electricity, we have dirt. That's all we have. So during our call with Hardy and Kevin and council, this is what we brought up to them, and Kevin and Hardy have said that they would go to AMCG and come back to us with a report on findings this week. So we just felt like that was a really important thing for people to be aware of. The most recent complaint about the timing was actually regarding the deconfliction plan finalization, which is way behind schedule, according to what was promised by Ttad. It was not regarding the discussions about the lease term sheet. As well, it's also the deconfliction plan that is currently the matter that is before the FAA. So during the meeting, we also asked Ttad to consider increasing the land lease rent incrementally over a period of a few years until the rent reached median market rate for comparables. And we were told that another lessee had made a similar request and the board had denied that request. So we would still obviously ask that this is an option to be considered by the board, since our rent is at a 1,200% increase, which any small business would understand how difficult that would be to accommodate. And regarding this as well, we also want to just bring attention to the first page in this rent study, which seems to be what everybody is referring to for guidance, which actually does advise that it would be in line with the majority of sponsors for the district to elect not to currently adjust and to defer these expenses. So just points we wanted to bring up for now, since it wasn't in that report from Cody, and we just feel like it's important and necessary information to clarify. So that's all I got for you.
Thank you, Jules. Hardy, did you want to speak again?
You know, just briefly, Chair Rolfe, I wanted to clarify with respect for the comments made here. There's a couple characteristics outlined in the appraisal that are dedicated to improved land, and access is one of them. Utilities near the boundary is one of them. And so we really want to at least ask the Skydive Truckee Tahoe to hold that opinion until we can get back onto a meeting with them and get Jeff's full opinion back on that, because there is access to the property, and utilities, while not at the leasehold boundary, are quite close. And so we'd like to talk more about that. And the other piece on the deconfliction plan is that we have stated numerous times the arbitrary timeline that was given to the airport to produce that plan. We basically, within a few days of the original timeline that we promised the deconfliction plan, we sent all of our data requests in a term copy to Skydive Truckee and the FAA, just in total transparency. There's nothing about the information we provided that's holding anybody up. It's not delaying anybody. It's not obstructing anybody. It's in full transparency in the spirit of cooperation. And so I just wanted to mention those things, that there's a lot of nuance to the discussion we've had here tonight. And we appreciate Skydive Truckee Tahoe getting into those discussions with us and working diligently to find a solution to all this. And so I want to mention those items here tonight.
Thank you.
I'm guessing you don't want further comment.
You can comment again if you like.
The point that I would just like to bring up is we actually do have in emails that the deconfliction plan would be completed by mid-February with a final acceptance by the board at the February board meeting on the 23rd when it comes to the deconfliction plan. So that's not really refutable in terms of a timeline. And what we did receive from Hardy was not a deconfliction plan. It was an informal suggestion of how the airport would like things to be. So, you know, when we started this whole negotiation with regards to the lease and the deconfliction plan, our biggest concern was that we would not have this finalized in order for us to start business in May, which is the start of our season. And we did stress that many, many times by email, that if this didn't get done really in a timely fashion, it would prevent us from securing staff, as you've all been talking about how difficult it is to get staff. If we can't assure our staff that we have a position for them for the entire season, at least a couple of months before we open. We're not going to have anyone. So that is our urgency with getting this taken care of as soon as possible. And so far the timeline has not been adhered to. So that's my comment in response to that.
Okay, thank you, Jules. Do we have any other public comments?
Maybe just real quick, we disagree on their assessment of the timeline on those things. We get what they're saying with February, but the FAA is the one that approves deconfliction plans. We would not hold up a lease if the FAA didn't approve a deconfliction plan. We would give that to them. We're trying to get that done and move through that process as quickly as we can. There's been a lot going on, and I think we could go back and forth all night talking about this, but I just felt like that had to be said.
All right. Okay. What is next? Hardy, are you finished with your report?
Yes, all done with the report. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Future agenda priorities and meeting management. Kevin?
Yeah, you got the rolling agenda, and I'll make some modifications to the rolling agenda based on some of the things we talked about tonight. The upcoming meetings, yeah, we'll get some Zooms out, or some doodles out on those upcoming meetings. This probably is a good time to talk about future meetings, and if we're going to start meeting in person. I was on area managers meeting today with, I think there were about almost 12 public agencies, and just about all of them are moving to in-person or some level of hybrid. But I think either TSD or TTSA was one of the last still doing Zoom, and they're moving to in-person. So I thought I'd throw that out there that we could start talking about when you might want to go back to in-person or what you want to do.
Kevin, the last time we talked about this, we discussed the technological possibility of a hybrid meeting. Have we made any headway on that?
Yes, we. So Mike Cook, he might be on this call somewhere. So I got a lot of names there, but we also talked with our broadcaster, and we have that capability. We could accommodate that if that's a desire of the board.
That's for public input, but we as a board either have to be there if we're going to be there.
So
a board member can't sign in as a hybrid person.
That's what we're trying to understand, and maybe Brent or Josh or Laura, who track those things a little closer, could answer. But there is a way to have the public and board members virtually with people in person. But whether or not that's legal or where the state's going with some of those things, I don't think we know yet.
Are you saying that if I'm out of town, we used to have people call in to be there, I can't Zoom in?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, is that's what we would do now. But again,
that's not what Mary said.
Well, I'm asking.
I'm saying, yes, we can, technologically, we can do all those things. What's going to be legal, what the state's going to put down, because the order that we're under that allows these is ending, I think, is it next month, Lauren? April?
It's supposed to expire soon, right, Brent? We don't know if he's going to re-extend it.
Exactly. Yeah, it depends on lots of different factors, mainly whether the state of emergency continues in effect or not. But even if all the AB 316 state of emergency goes away, board members can still attend remotely as long as a majority of them are within the geographic boundaries of the district. So if Rick is in Ireland, you need 3 board members to be within Truckee, Tahoe.
Brent, my vacations never conflict with board meetings. I've not missed a single one, and I'll be home in May after Ireland.
It was just an example.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I felt a little pointed.
Only because
we all want to go with you.
You said you were going to be in Ireland, so it was a great
Yes.
example. I was hoping it was a great example.
It was.
And Brent, if the executive order or the executive order within the state of the emergency, when it comes to altering Brown Act rules and regulations, expires, or even if it expires in April, whenever it expires, the previous rules would apply where we would have to agendize board members' locations and have it be accessible to the public. So yeah, Rick or whoever, you could still Zoom. We just have to post your location like we used to. And you can't be in a moving vehicle or traveling.
Okay.
And you can't be in, say, like the class I went to, the example they gave was somebody who's on a cruise ship and they said, anybody can come to my room. But the problem with that is you had to pay to get on the cruise ship.
I see.
Yeah, it's got to be open to the public and, of course, non-discriminatory and no fee.
For me personally, I'm happy to go in person, but if any of my board mates is uncomfortable with it, I will support that board mate in extending this.
How do you feel about it? Teresa, you're muted.
That's okay. Got it. I was just going to say, we, even at this late hour, still have 24 people on this call. We never have anyone in person. We lose so much by making them show up to talk. But I'll go. I don't know. I don't feel like we get the same participation level.
That's what I said at the coffee talk. Somebody said, when do you go in person? I said, we've got more people in this room than we have at board meetings.
Yeah,
I don't know that we've ever, in 6 years, had 24 people there.
It all hinges
Except
on,
for when the soccer players were there. Sorry.
That's it.
I mean, ultimately, it all hinges on this executive order timing out and not being extended. So if it times out, we have to be in person in April.
Ah, okay.
So we should plan for April to
Yeah,
be.
you might want to plan for that. We'll get you more information on that. But so what I'm hearing is if it's extended, Zoom. If it's not, then we're in person for April.
And is there any way to do a hybrid in April? Even
it depends on how they write this legislation or whatever they extend. But I'll get with Kat. You know, once we know, Kat and Lauren will meet up. But what I'm hearing is that there's a desire by the board to, because of a lot of the flexibility and people being able to attend, to try and continue Zoom.
Yeah.
So I'm hearing.
Well, and also allowing more of the public to come.
Yeah, access. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
And
staff and board member conference.
well,
attendance?
first, I want to say something about the rolling agenda.
Oh, okay.
As far back as December, and maybe even before that, we were going to be having the Fly Quiet, new Fly Quiet to replace the home basing. That was supposed to be in February, and now it's showing up on the rolling agenda in May.
Yeah.
And I would like to see that in April.
We will try and get that up as soon as we can. It's just part of it's. This is what I needed. That kind of feedback on what items to put, just so that we have workable agendas without too many items. But if there's a strong desire to get that on there, we'll
Yeah, it keeps bumping, and I would like it moved up.
Yeah, we're close to having that ready, anyways. So.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Okay. Were there any conferences to report out?
I don't think so. I am doing a presentation on Tuesday at the Nevada Association of Airports in a city called Reno at the Pepper Mill. If anyone wants to come and hear a presentation, but yeah, don't have anything other than that.
All right. Meeting review and direction to staff.
Yeah, so kind of here's what I have. we're going to work on the Ttad resolution to accommodate all the different things that the board had asked for, the isms and some of those things that we'll bring back a new version of that. Have a policy on the discrimination. That's under the other one, but an agenda item on leadership for organizations that don't support the Ttad resolution, to have a policy that we adopt that organizations that we do business with or that lease property, or we'll work through that with our legal team that are in conflict with those protected classes in the Ttad resolution. We'll bring that back for this next month. And then we'll talk to Peter Kirsch on the strongest language possible on adherence to our NAP and touch and goes and some of those things. I had that in there. And some of this is in the motion for that agenda item, with including touch and go emergency procedures, some of those things that we had in the update to the rules and regs. We'll doodle 3 workshops. The first one hopefully being in May, or early May. I'm hoping like the first week of May, maybe the end of April. We'll see. And then we'll do 2 more going to the end of the year, 1 each quarter. And then Kat's going to attend our ACT meeting in April. Is that right?
No.
Okay.
Got the new ad hoc.
Oh, yeah, that one. Okay. Perfect.
Yeah, I'm doing May though.
May. Yeah. And then, before the David and Rick ad hoc committee for hangar uses and standards, we'll come up with the right name as we meet. And then our next meeting will be, we'll get back to everyone on the format for our next meeting based on how the state decides future meetings. And again, I didn't include all the things that were already approved in motions. I've got records of those too, but those are the to-do things that I had. Anything else?
And the fly quiet too. The fly quiet.
Yeah, fly quiet in the rolling agenda. I have that written on the rolling agenda too, right there. So. Yeah. Okay. All right, that's it for that.
All right.
So, what, closed session? Do we need a motion or anything?
Yeah, let me text Josh. Sorry. Yeah, Josh will be joining us for the closed session on that. But yeah, we need to, Brent, you want to lead them into how to get into the closed session?
Yeah, if you want, I can just, it's going to be a closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9, Paragraph 2, Subdivision D as in Delta, significant exposure to litigation, and there is 1 pending case, and you do need to ask for any public comment.
So is there any public comment on the closed session? I don't think so.
Okay. So we're logging out?
Yeah, we'll leave this meeting, and then the meeting will stay open for anyone else that's attending. The board will leave, and we'll go to this other meeting, which I will open, and then we'll come back to this meeting.
And I assume Josh will work you through the rest of.
Yes, I just texted him. He's joining right now.
Okay. Good night, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks.